fourth round pick, depending on the source. I think they mean the same thing, but basically it is a fifth round pick that can become a fourth round pick based on certain conditions. I have not seen reports of what those conditions are. And as soon as we know, we will bring that to you. But this was Ian Rappaport this morning, NFL Network insider, discussing some of the behind the scenes of this trade. David, do you have that clip? We are ready. This was Ian Rappaport of NFL Network this morning describing the trade between the Titans and the Chiefs.
This has been a long rumored trade, really, over the last several weeks, several months. I mean, literally forever, it seems like we've been talking about when are the Kansas City Chiefs, who lost Hollywood Brown early in the season, have a need for a big-time playmaker, are not going to have Juju Smith-Schuster this week. When are they going to trade for DeAndre Hopkins? And really, this didn't kick into gear until about midnight Kansas City time. At that point, the Chiefs and the Titans got together, kicked back and forth a couple scenarios, finally figured out a way, maybe shorter, to get this done. And the news was out early this morning. It is going to be a conditional fifth-round pick going from Kansas City to the Tennessee Titans. That could be a fourth-round pick based on a series of team and personal conditions. DeAndre Hopkins' salary is also going to be split among these two teams. The Chiefs do not have a ton of salary cap space allotted for these kinds of moves, so the Tennessee Titans are going to eat some of the salary just to facilitate this move and get a little bit of a better draft pick. But for Tennessee, it has not been the season they wanted. I'm not so sure DeAndre Hopkins is unhappy about going from the Titans to the Chiefs, so certainly this makes sense to them. Get rid of the salary and recoup a big-time draft pick for that. And for KC, they are undefeated. They are awesome. We know they still need a little juice on offense, and they have certainly gotten some juice with DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers of his era.
So DeAndre Hopkins from the outhouse to the penthouse, from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph to Patrick Mahomes. Gentlemen, when we were discussing the possibility of this trade, I feel like we discussed this exact scenario. A fifth-round pick, maybe a fourth if certain conditions are met. Again, I have not seen the conditions on the trade that would bump it from a fifth to a fourth. If we see them, we will bring them to you. But what were your thoughts when you woke up this morning and you saw that DeAndre Hopkins, no longer a member of the Tennessee Titans, now a member of the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs?
I'll tell you one thing, the happiest person in Nashville is DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, he's probably not here anymore. He's probably in Kansas City.
He's probably in Kansas City. Well, I'm just saying, probably the happiest person that was in Nashville is DeAndre Hopkins. He gets that opportunity to go on a team with a Hall of Fame quarterback. And I know Patrick Mahomes has many years left in the NFL, but if he retired today, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So he gets an opportunity, the first time in his career that he gets an opportunity to play with a legit Hall of Fame quarterback. Now we get to see how this works out. He had an opportunity to go to them last year, but he chose to go with the money. And there's nothing wrong with that. He got his money. But you started to see quickly that, this team wasn't going anywhere far. And Willie and I have been beating this drum since the off season, and everybody was screaming, no, don't get rid of it. They're not, no, this and that, sign them to a new contract, do this, do that. And we were sitting here like, listen, no, why do you want to re-sign or add years to an aging receiver? I know he still can play, but why would you want to add years to an aging receiver? If you can trade him and get something for him, because you will get something for him, then that's what you do. Because what you're trying to do is build up a franchise, not hold on to one specific player. And it came to a point where I think they had no choice but to trade. They did exactly. And what have I been saying, Willie? Do to him what you did to Kevin Byard. Give him an opportunity to go somewhere where he can win. Do him a favor and send him somewhere. People cried last year when Kevin Byard left. No, it was good that he left. Send him, because this team wasn't going anywhere. Send him somewhere where he has a legit chance at ending sort of his last years on a winning organization. The same with D-Hop. Allow him to, spend his last whatever years on a winning franchise. And that is what the Titans chose to do. And they got compensated really well. a fifth that can parlay into a fourth. Hadn't we been saying that, Willie?
I think we pretty much said that would be the market. I think we nailed it. And I would say that the flexibility of not looking at a contract extension, which our friend in the afternoon was
Beating
on
the
the
drum.
stump for during multiple shows during training camp, made him more tradable. I think he was a more attractive trade piece as a pending, free agent, basically. And now there's incentive. You want DeAndre Hopkins to do well for the Chiefs. I think that we still don't know. I think as we speak right now, what the conditions are that would move it up to a fourth. That would be nice. But like we've been saying, this team has to have picks. I actually think that the passing game could, and I don't know if it will, but I think the roles of the remaining wide receivers could be sorted out better.
Yes.
Now that D-Hop's situation is resolved and he's moved on. It starts with Ridley. They are stuck with Ridley. He has been lost right now. But they have to get a return on that investment. Maybe this will help define his role now that Hopkins is out of the mix. I don't know, but strange things can happen, I think, when you trade a guy away. I look at the Predators a couple years ago when they traded 4 guys away, and it looked like it was going to be, oh, man, they may not win another game. But they actually found other guys that rallied, found a role, and played well for the remainder of the season. I think that's what you have to hope for the Titans. And like you said, D-Hop is now in a better place at his stage of his career. He's got a chance to win big, and I think he's going to a team that will know how to use him.
Exactly, and he will not. He's one of those guys where because of the quarterback, he's always going to figure into the progression. He can start off as the number 4 guy that potentially gets the ball and then turns around and ends up being the first guy that gets the ball. Why? Because you got a quarterback that can read the field, a quarterback that understands where everybody is. So he goes from here wondering if he's going to get touches to going to Kansas City, knowing that I better be ready. Even the first game that I play, I better be ready to catch, at least get 3 or 4 targets. I better be ready for that. So it's just a great opportunity for both him and for both the Titans, because now they regain some picks. And if he plays well, or if he factors in, maybe it's tied to percentages of plays he participates in. So you set yourself up, if you're the Tennessee Titans, to not only get a potential 5th round, but then if it goes really well, then you can parlay that into a 4th round pick. So, and the Titans need picks. They need to build up this roster, because right now, as it has been for the last 3 years, the depth of this roster is still not there.
Was it the Super Bowl winning Rams that were F them picks? The Titans need to get shirts that say, get them picks.
Well, the Rams trying to get those picks back now.
So Jordan Reed of ESPN tweeted this morning, post Hopkins trade, the Titans now have 7 draft picks in 2025. A first, a second, a fourth or fifth, depending on the conditions of the Hopkins trade, a 5th, a 6th, and a 7th. So 7 draft picks in 2025, according to Jordan Reed of ESPN, following this deal. And there was also another interesting nugget from Diana Rossini of The Athletic. She reported, quote, the Chiefs also discussed star wide receiver Cooper Kupp with the Los Angeles Rams, team sources said, but Kansas City needed to trade with a team that was willing to take on a large chunk of the player's salary and didn't want to give up high picks. Tennessee was the team willing to play ball. Hopkins, 32, is in the final season of a 2-year, $26 million contract.
So the Chiefs were not in a position to take on a player that had extra years. Huh.
And why is that? Is it because the cap is fake? No.
That sounds about right. What do you mean? The cap's real? What?
The cap has its real components to it, okay? And I'm sure the Chiefs would have rather probably had Cooper Kupp, because he probably fits really well with what they want to do schematic wise, but they couldn't do that because the Rams owe him a lot of money. So then they can go to a D-Hop, and the Titans can eat half of that, and then he becomes what they wanted Juju Smith-Schuster to be this year, which he was last year. That guy on third down and in the red zone that we can look to. We had another guy that we can look to. Kansas City don't care about the 20 from the 20 to the 20 because they know that Patrick Mahomes is going to figure something out the 20 to the 20. It's the red zone where that's why they go out and get Juju Smith-Schuster. That's why they keep Travis Kelce. That's why now they're bringing in Hop, because these are red zone threats. These are bigger body guys that can play basketball on turf. So he fits schematically what they want to do between, whatever they want to call the red zone, whether it's the 25 on in or the 20 on in. He elevates them from that standpoint.
So I saw one trade grade already from ESPN. Seth Walder of ESPN Analytics gave the Titans a B for this trade and the Chiefs an A minus. Of course, most of the trade analysis was about the Chiefs aspect of it, but this is what he wrote about the Titans. Quote, as for Tennessee, trading Hopkins was a no-brainer move that had to be done. While it made sense for the Titans to improve their roster in 2024 in hopes of contending if Will Levis significantly improved, he hasn't, and the 1-5 Titans aren't going anywhere. Given that Hopkins was going to be 33 and they had money to spend, a compensatory pick for losing him in free agency was far from guaranteed, if not unlikely. Given the receiver's age and contract, they had virtually no choice. They had to move Hopkins and take the best offer they could get. And we saw some big trades for wide receivers last week. Devontae Adams from the Raiders to the Jets. That was a third-round pick that could become a second-round pick. Amari Cooper from the Browns to the Bills, the highest pick acquired, and that was a third-round pick. So it was a third-round pick for Adams that could become a second, a third-round pick for Cooper, a fifth-round pick that could become a fourth-round pick for Hopkins, which seems right.
I think if you look at the signing of Hopkins as an asset, it's a win for the Titans. They got a good year out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, when you look at it, a rebound year. If you look at what had happened the previous year or two with Hopkins, that was a big discussion that we had leading up to the signing is, what are you getting? You're not getting the 2019, 2018 Hopkins in the prime of his career. This is a guy that was suspended, had some injury issues, but he rebounded and had a solid year last year, got hurt in training camp, but they were still able to turn him into an asset. So that's a pretty good usage of resources, I think. You got what you hoped you would get, and you're able to spin him off and get an asset that you hope you can turn into something with a future pick. So all those things, like, I don't think they were going to get a whole lot more, especially because he wasn't lighting it up this year. And his injury is something that is still probably a factor. He that said when he came back from that knee specific thing that it was going to be something that had to be managed for the rest of the season. So I think to get an asset back at this stage is a win.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you can get back in this trade, I think it was going to be a plus, as long as it, as long as it wasn't like a 6th or 7th round pick. But the Titans knew that they would at least get a 5th round pick for D-Hop, because there are teams in need. The minute Kansas City, wide receivers start falling in Kansas City, that's when the price sort of went up for D-Hop and other receivers around this league. And then you have other teams that are dealing with injuries. You look at Tampa. Do Tampa believe they still have a shot at a legitimate playoff run? If they do, then they're going to make a move to go get one of these wide receivers, probably a guy like Cooper Kupp, because Tampa is down 2 receivers. So there's going to be some reshuffling still at this position, because teams, at this point, receivers are falling, and teams that believe they have a shot at not just making it into the playoffs, but going on a run, they're going to need that asset. They're going to need someone that can catch the football. So whether it would have been Kansas City, I think he was on his way out the door. That past game was evident that something was going on. He wasn't happy, and they were going to make a move.
615-737-1025. We will take your thoughts on the DeAndre Hopkins trade all show long on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we'll quickly get into the Predators' first win of the season last night against the Boston Bruins. Chris Mason will join us to discuss that. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Let's talk F&M Bank. Banking made easy on purpose. 20 locations in our listening area, and there's one in your neighborhood. Very, very likely so. 6 locations in Clarksville, one up in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, and then throughout Middle Tennessee, West End Avenue. They try to be right in the heart of your community. Why? Because in those communities, they want to make your banking needs easier. Your business means more to them. And so give them a shot. Go to myfmbank.com, find that location, and go give them a visit. Take a look at some of the services they have, especially for small business owners, people who, regardless of your stage and your So we take it to the bank every Friday on the show at 1:45, thanks to F&M Bank. So go to that website and start doing some business with them. You'll enjoy it. myfmbank.com. Website, Willie. Website, not phone number. Website, myfmbank.com. Banking made easy on purpose. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3. The Game will get back into the DeAndre Hopkins trade. Coming up after we discuss the Predators' first win of the season, a 4-0 win against the Boston Bruins last night. And joining us to discuss that, as he does every Wednesday morning, is the one and only Chris Mason, Predators television analyst. Chris, good to see the Predators get a win last night, a 4-0 win against the Bruins. What impressed you most about the Predators' performance last night?
I just think that, I think for the first time this year that we saw what we all remember they should look like when they're playing well, and how they want to go out and execute the system and the standard of play in terms of the net and everybody, playing as a group, hard to play against, those types of things. I thought UC Saros was his best game by far. And the thing that impressed me most was the opponent they did it against. A team that, I would say by any metric is really hard to get to the interior, really hard to generate any offense against. And I think last night we saw by far the Predators' best effort in obviously the result, their first win, but the type of offense they created. They got to the hard areas. They really outbattled one of the best defensive cores, one of the biggest defensive cores in the league with the Bruins. So I thought all around a really good game and a strong response from an 0-5 start. It's one game, but that's what it looks like when they're playing well.
As you mentioned, Chris, one thing that happened in last night's game that the Predators struggled to do through the first 5 games is make it to that home plate area, that slot area in front of the net. They were the perimeter Predators through 5 games, a lot of shots on net, but not from grade A scoring chance areas. What was the difference last night? What allowed them to do that maybe they weren't doing in the first 5 games?
Well, they committed to it, and it takes everybody. I think last season, and that's all we have to go on at this point, is if you're doing the comparison of what it looks like when they're doing it well, they had everybody. They were one of the top offensive teams in the last 30 games of the season because they went to the net and everybody did it. I feel at the beginning of the year, you add superstar players, skill guys like Stamkos and Shea and Marchessault, maybe you think, hey, maybe we could score a little bit different. Hey, maybe we can make some more east-west and some cute plays, and we don't have to always go to the net, and we don't always have to play that, relentless tag word style of play. But this league, you quickly figure it out that that's exactly what you need to do, no matter the skill you have. And especially for this team and the way that Andrew Brunette demands his players, and they know themselves, but it's almost a reminder of exactly how hard and how committed you have to be and how hard you have to play. And I think we saw that for the first time where you had everybody, right? It's a team that you need the depth guys going. The fourth line, I thought, had a great game. Zach Leroux came in. I thought he added a spark. Karen and Smith were good. And all the way down the lineup, I thought the second line that we've kind of been having trouble with trying to get some production 5-on-5. They didn't get any goals, but I thought they were sniffing around. They got some chances, the best they looked, and the best team effort by far. And now all you got to do is you got to go follow it up and do it again. But I think it was a good reminder for the group to just remind them how hard they have to work and exactly what they have to do.
We'll talk with C. Mace, Chris Mason, one half of the television broadcasting team. The other half is right here to my right, Willie Donick. Now, I'm sure you heard Barry Trotz yesterday with Jared, and he was on point last night, yesterday, and he said some things that probably was tough for some people to hear, but I'm sure everything that he told Jared was what he told the team prior to even going on with Jared. Do you think that had something to do with the way, because they came out more energetic, they came out a little bit more feisty, and my man Novak, once again, he getting those goals. So I may go over, what did I say? I said he was going to have 10, 15 goals, something like that. He's going to end up having more than that. This kid is playing lights out. But do you think that what Barry said last night or yesterday before the game hit home?
Absolutely. I think, I think Novak, he'll be over 20 by the end of the year, and that's my prediction, as he should. But I think they know that. This is a group that's very accountable. It's not a young group of players that doesn't understand how they need to play in order to have success. So I think they knew that. And, coming from a GM, and Barry's very open when he goes on, Jared or whatever media publication he's doing. But the players know that where they stand with him. And I think as a player, I'm sure you appreciate that, D-Mace. I don't care if somebody says, you outright stink or you were terrible or this or that. As long as you know where you stand in the eyes of your manager or your coach, I think as a player, that's all you can ask for. And I think they decided. I think the players decided that, all right, enough is enough. This isn't acceptable. That gets thrown around a lot in sports. But when you're 0-5 and you got a team on paper that should be able to, quite honestly, not play a great game and still win, it just wasn't up to the standard. And we all know the difference when we see, a team go out and they're playing their butts off and they're trying to do the right things and they lose. You can live with that. That's okay. That's going to happen. You can see, all right, we're going to come out of this. But some of the stuff they were doing, we talk a lot about, the new guys getting acclimated. But Bruno's issue and Trotzi's issue was a lot of it was the guys that were here and then don't really have an excuse for not playing the right way. So I think they knew, and I think it was important for them the room to kind of decide, all right, guys, enough's enough. The joke's over. This isn't what we do. This isn't who we are. Let's go. So I think that, Barry saying that, he probably made that well known to the group way before that interview for sure. But I think the response to me is what you look for from a team with strong leadership.
Chris Mason is with us. Mace, for people that maybe didn't watch the game start to finish, one of the things that we've been harping on, and Barry Trotz mentioned this many times in the interview with Jared yesterday, we went through 3 examples in our pregame last night. Moments in the game where the Predators seize the momentum, maybe dig out of a hole, and then give the goal back with a lapse. Last night, they had a crossroads, especially when they scored that early power play goal right on the next shift. Here comes the best goal scorer that Boston has, maybe one of the top 10 goal scorers in the league, David Pastrnak, and Juuse Saros makes the big save. I thought that was a moment in the game, and there was, I think the other example I would show would be Boston's power play early in the third period with Nashville leading 2-0. They came up with the big stop. They kept the momentum going. They got over the hump there.
That's a huge moment. And, Saros, he's played well, so far in the season, but it's those moments in the game that Pastrnak scores there, and that building and that team's confidence, which is fragile, is completely deflated. It's the old, here we go again, guys. We played so hard. We had a great start. And all of a sudden we get the lead, which is so hard to do. And then we give up a goal, and then it's scramble situation. And then you get those things creeping back in your game where you're trying too hard, self-doubt, all those types of things. But Saros he made a bunch of those saves last night. And although it was a great game for the Predators, they still gave up. You're going to give up chances every game, but they gave up some big-time chances to their top players. Pastrnak must be shaking his game. Marchand, same thing. They had a ton of chances, a ton of great opportunities. But again, you get that save, and all of a sudden it just makes everybody, a foot taller and 10 pounds heavier, and you're that much more confident because your goalie's going. You can kind of just ease into it and just go play your game. You don't have to think. And that's kind of what I saw last night was they just went out and played. It wasn't overthinking. They kind of simplified the way they played. They weren't trying the cute stuff. They got some odd man rushes, I think maybe more than any other game. I didn't look at the analytics, but I felt they had a couple nice.
I believe it was 9-7 Nashville last night, which was that's a big improvement.
There you go. That's a big improvement, and that's it hasn't been the trend this year. So I think because a lot of the things they did good defensively, they rewarded themselves, and they earned those odd man rush situations, and then they capitalized. And they got the big plays, they got the big goal, they got the big kill, they got the big save. It was a really good game and a good response for a team that was in not a good space, but they found a way, and it's one game, and hopefully they can use that to build something because they got a back-to-backer coming up.
Chris Mason, Predators television analyst, joining us as he does every Wednesday morning. Chris, thanks for chatting. We'll talk next week.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
That's Chris Mason. We have some breaking Titans news. According to Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, the Seattle Seahawks are sending linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round draft pick to the Tennessee for Ernest Jones. So according to Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, the Seahawks are sending Jerome Baker, linebacker, and a 4th-round pick to the Titans for Ernest Jones. So add another draft pick for the Tennessee Titans. Ernest Jones was a trade acquisition right before the season from the Rams. Now a member of the Seattle Seahawks. So going back to the NFC West for Ernest Jones. But Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick to the Titans. You guys, quick thoughts.
I don't know anything about Baker. We have to do our homework on him. I am very puzzled about the Ernest Jones. Now he's been traded twice in one season. That's very rare in the NFL. But I think it's the right idea to stockpile draft picks. So we'll have to see what Baker is. But Jones, I think we were all excited at the beginning, but at 1-5, I think you got to try stuff like this. But that's my first thought.
You got to make moves. You trade a receiver that was productive for you last year, and the offense was struggling this year. So you trade away an asset to get picks, and then you trade away a defensive guy that was playing. He was playing pretty good. I mean, it wasn't like, at least me, I wasn't questioning the trade when they made it. And I wasn't questioning, him while he was here playing. That came out of the blue as far as them trading Ernest Jones. I thought he would at least survive the year, and then they would reevaluate it after that. But right now you can see what's going on. It's the same thing they were trying to do last year. I think they wanted to do a overhaul last year with everybody, Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Byard, all those guys, but it was stopped. And I get why it was stopped. So you were able to trade away 1 or 2 guys, but not the full plate. This year, they're in, hey, listen, we're 1-5 right now. We're not going many places. Let's try to get something for guys that still can play. D-Hop, Jones. And don't be surprised if there's another trade that may come up pretty soon here. I wouldn't be surprised if Treylon Burks is traded. Depending on the severity of his injury. Because right now it's like, listen, we need to stockpile draft picks in order to build our team up. Really, Willie was right yesterday. Listen, we can supplement, what we need to do free agency wise. But if we want to be a good team moving forward, we got to do it in the draft.
Tom Pelissero of NFL Network reports that the Seahawks are trading linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick to the Tennessee Titans for Ernest Jones. By my rough count, that means the Titans now have 2 4th-round draft picks and the potential for a 3rd, depending on the conditions on the DeAndre Hopkins trade. 615-737-1025. Willie, you had a thought?
Well, let's give you a quick rundown of Baker. I'm just looking at his numbers. He is played college football at Ohio State. He's about to turn 28 before the season is over. He started, for the most part, the last several years coming into this year for Miami, and then ended up with Seattle. And obviously, Seattle thinks they can win with the 49ers kind of stumbling around. Seattle has a chance to make a run in that division. It's pretty wide open in the West right now, right?
Yeah.
And so they're willing to give a draft pick and Baker for what they would see as an upgrade in Jones, a blitzing linebacker that would seem to fit the Ravens defense. The new guy, what's his name? McDaniel? What's his name?
McDonald.
So, and Baker, I don't know, but he has played a lot of games in the league, and he has been a starter. He's had as many as 7 sacks in a season. So, I don't. It's an interesting swap. But you get an extra pick. That's the key.
This is almost like a sort of a lateral trade. This is not you're getting better or I'm getting better.
But you get a 4th-round
pick.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. It's about okay,
the
let's swap the 2 guys because it's easy to do because both guys are basically they're going into the same defense.
It reminds me of the Kevin Byard trade. Was it Terrell Edmonds was the player that the Titans got back from the Eagles, who was also a safety to fill the spot that Byard left behind?
But this is even better for both teams because you're taking 2 linebackers that essentially were in the same system. So there's not going to be this, we need to teach him our defense. No, the same defense they're playing in Seattle is the same defense they're playing here in Tennessee. Now, there may be some variations of it that's a little bit different, but I'm sure from schematically, it's just a swap. That's all. But in that swap, you get a younger player and you give us a draft pick. So I think it's a win-win for both teams.
As you just said, a texter said that Baker has played well in Mike McDonald's defense, which is the same as what Denard Wilson runs. So that is the news. Also from Ian Rappaport, the deal is now done for DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs. The Titans will pay about half of Hopkins' salary. It may take some time because Hopkins will have to sign a new contract with the Titans. Then he'll be traded to the Chiefs. So there's some more news on the DeAndre Hopkins front. We'll get back into all of it. We want your calls and texts at 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Baker looks like a steady starter for. I mean, look at his year by year. Basically a starter for most of his career with the Dolphins.
Hey, Derek Mason here. You've heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you have set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds only to face disappointment. But at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D-Mays, Fingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3. The game, the trades are coming in quickly. So long, DeAndre Hopkins off to the Kansas City Chiefs. So long, Ernest Jones off to the Seattle Seahawks for linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick. Paul Gaharski tweets this: the Titans totals from the Ernest Jones trade. So the trade from the Rams to the Titans and the trade from the Titans to the Seahawks. The Titans get a 2025 4th, a 2026 6th, and Jerome Baker on an expiring contract. And the Titans gave up a 2026 5th. So it seems like pretty good asset management by the Titans in this Ernest Jones situation.
Yes, and I think it is with the mentality that we've been calling for, is doing as much as you can to accumulate extra picks is important. And in and of itself, an extra 6 here, an extra 5th there, you might say, well, what are the chances that guy's going to be good? Well, they are what they are for all picks, right?
Yeah.
We've analyzed the draft, right? If you look, your batting average is not going to ever be 100%. You're not going to hit every pick. But the more throws you have at the dartboard, the better chances you have of getting a good player, or maybe the diamond in the rough that turns into a really good impact player. So the more picks they have, the better. This is the smart approach.
So by my count, the Titans now have 2 4th-round draft picks and the potential for a 3rd, depending on the conditions for DeAndre Hopkins. So as you said off air, Derek, you could package a couple of those 4th-round picks for a higher pick, because that's part of the game as well, moving up in the draft or moving down and accumulating more picks. But the Titans, by my rough count, now have 2 4th-round picks and the opportunity for a 3rd, depending on the conditions of the DeAndre Hopkins trade, which as of this moment, we do not know. Ben is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, with a comment on DeAndre Hopkins. Ben, go ahead.
Guys, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. So, I called you guys the other day, and, we're talking about a similar thing. And first of all, I think that, the speculation was, when they first came out and said, oh, we're rebuilding this team, and the reaction from you guys and a bunch of other was, oh, now you're rebuilding, after your season's abysmal. And so I think everybody was like, okay, well, are they really rebuilding? You got to be all in. Well, I think now, especially after this latest trade, we see that they're all in and they really mean it. They are rebuilding. They're going to try and get rid of a bunch of players, just like D-May said a little bit ago. And, we're going to see what this organization's about. But I got to say this, and I said this on the last show, and I wasn't going to say it again, but especially now with this latest trade, and we see what the Titans are doing, there is a very crucial piece to this whole thing with the rebuild that's not going to work unless they do it. And D-Mays, I'm sorry, I don't want anything for it. If it happens, I'll be happy for you. But I really think that the Titans need to take D-Mays on as a consultant and help them through this rebuild process, because they clearly don't know what they're doing. So they're going to have all these picks, but I don't really trust this organization as it sits right now to do the right thing with these picks. They need somebody like you that has a lot of football knowledge and common sense. And listen, I know you got Bill Belichick's number somewhere in your phone. You need to call Bill, and the two of you work it out with your agents, and you get hired as consultants to this awful Titans team and help bring them back to good. I'll shut up and listen.
Ben, thank you.
Thank
Derek
you,
has
Ben.
enough things going on in his
Yeah.
life.
Listen,
Hey, listen, if they
we're
wanna-
not rebuilding.
listen,
We
if-
are in a
yeah.
window to win on this show. We're
Yes.
doing well. We want to
This is a win now
We're
show.
not rebuilding our show.
No, this is a win now show.
Yes.
Hey, listen, if they want to pay me 7 figures, I'll do it. Come on. I mean, I can still do the show.
We wouldn't blame you. If
Exactly.
it's that. if
But
it's that.
I mean, then and if it don't work, then they could just blame it on me. I take it. Then you can fire me the next year, but you still have to pay me my contract. So there it is. No, this team. Listen, I think we asked this question before, as other radio show hosts on the station have asked this question. Do you trust those that are at the helm now to make the right decisions when it comes to the draft this upcoming in 2025. I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. And I'm not, and no, no disrespect to Ben, but I don't think anyone knows how the inner workings go when you're trying to make these picks. There was only one person on this station that knew, and God rest his soul now, and that's Floyd Reese. He's the only person that knew, like truly knew what went on when it comes to draft picks and how they evaluate these guys. So I'm not sure if Rand and company is. I'm not sure if there isn't, if they are not. But they're going to get a chance to. They're going to get a chance to really put their stamp on this franchise moving forward. We saw a little bit of it last year. They wanted to go into a full-fledged rebuild, but when you don't get rid of, you don't move on from Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, it's hard to do that. It's hard to really go into that mode. They're able to do it now. That's why I say I wouldn't be surprised if there's potentially other moves that are made, because honestly, they got to strip this thing down to build it back up. They're doing the same thing. They want to do the same thing San Fran did. San Fran was a bad organization for a minute there. And then what did they do? All those guys that you see, a lot of those guys that you see now that are playmakers for them, they were draft picks. They built their team with young guys, and they supplemented by bringing in a Trent Williams or a Christian McCaffrey, guys like that. But Ayuk and those guys, Debo, they drafted. Purdy, they drafted.
You've got to draft
Exactly.
your foundation. You're not going to build a great team with free agents. You have to have a nucleus of good players that you've drafted and developed, and they don't have that right now.
Exactly.
So they have to build that. Let's give you a little bit more on Baker, because this is so new. I'm trying to understand this because we now easily understand what they're trying to do in compiling draft picks, which is smart for a rebuilding team. Hello. I'm going to keep throwing that out there, reminding people. But I think this is a smart way of doing it. They swapped Baker for Jones, right? I'm trying to look at this from the Seahawks perspective, because these two guys, if I get this right, remember, Baker was new on the Seahawks this year. I'm reading my football almanac from FTN before the season. Mike McDonald brings in from the Ravens his defense to head up the Seahawks. The Seahawks are in contention right now. 3-0, lost 3 in a row, got a big win last week against the Falcons. Jerome Baker fits, this was the preseason scouting report on Baker. Jerome Baker fits McDonald's desire for versatility to a T. Baker is a solid cover linebacker, but also has 22.5 sacks in the last 6 years as a regular blitzer. That, to me, is exactly what I was hearing about Ernest Jones, right? So the same type of player. But obviously the Seahawks think that Jones is an upgrade for a team that's trying to win right now. But the Titans get the same type of player back to at least hold their place. Baker, as I understand it, is on an expiring contract. He's not an old player. He's 28. He did miss a couple games earlier this season with a hamstring injury, but he's played the last 3 games. So he appears to be healthy again. So I would love to hear the Seahawks' perspective as to why they think Jones is worth giving up that pick, right? Jones, they must think Jones is way better than Baker if they want to make that deal, because you don't just give away picks like that unless you think that's a significant upgrade. So interesting to me.
Joseph is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joseph, go ahead.
Quick question. Just wondering, would you take the current 2024 Tennessee Titans or the back half of the 2022 Tennessee Titans? Do you think we're worse off than we were back then?
You can't compare it. That was
Thank
the
you,
end
Joseph.
of an
Thank you.
era,
Yeah.
and this is the beginning of an era.
Mhm.
So I hear that comparison. Essentially, it's the same, right, as far as the wins and losses.
Mhm.
He's talking about the collapse in the post-Robinson, right, as opposed to what they have right now. And so I don't think it's relevant, because as I was saying all along, this is not me coming up with this now. I was saying that when you move on from Henry and Tannehill and Byard and Vrabel, It is a new era. You are starting from scratch. The window of all those great Sundays that we had that a lot of people complained about, oh, Tannehill's not good enough. You can't win a Super Bowl with Tannehill. You got to get rid of Tannehill. Those Sundays are looking pretty good right now. They were relevant. They had a good run, but the run was coming to an end. So this is new. It's a relevant question to ask in some ways.
Yeah.
I see what he's saying. Are they moving in the right direction? But it's a new era. And so it's hard to compare a closing window
To a
with
opening,
with a rebuild. This is a rebuild. They're trying to open a new window, and they know where they are right now. They've got a long way to go.
Well, I mean, these two teams are, whether it be toward the latter part of that particular year or this team. I think both teams are in this sort of crossroads type of situation where it was, like Willie said, it was coming toward the end. The window was closing. So
Right. They were trying to
figure
keep they're trying
exactly.
to
You're
keep the
trying
window
to
open.
keep it open, but it
Push,
was like,
keep it open. It's
no.
open. Keep it open.
Mm-mm.
Now the window is closed, and now you're trying to pull it back open.
Exactly.
Like, we got to build something. We got to
Slowly.
get some strength so we can pull it back open.
But they can't
There's a
do it
difference.
unless they accumulate draft picks. At the end of that run, they didn't have any draft. They didn't have many draft picks. They didn't have depth on their team, so it was a little bit harder to sort of execute what they wanted to execute in regards to the season. Because when you don't have no depth, the margins are very slim when you're a healthy team and a team with depth. But if you have no depth and then you start getting injured, that margin is gone completely. And then you go from being a playoff team to the dark side. Like, we are just falling and there's nothing that's going to stop us. They didn't want to get to that point where they were falling and had no parachute to stop the fall. If they didn't make these moves that they made today and the moves that they made last year, this team will continue to be in a free fall. I understand that people look at Derrick Henry and say, he's doing great. Yes, he is doing great, but that's for Baltimore. Baltimore has all the components you need for a back like Derrick Henry to come in and do well. He doesn't have to be the guy. He can be a guy next to the guy. And he wasn't that in Tennessee. He was the guy amongst a bunch of guys that you wasn't going to win with. So they had to make a move. But when you keep a Derrick Henry, you're stuck. Like, we're going to be good enough to win 6 games with him, but we ain't going to be able to get where we want to go because we're not able to build up this roster. Let's allow him to. We didn't trade him. We did right by him. Let him finish out his career here and then go somewhere else where he has a chance to win. But now we got to start to build up our roster. And how do we do that? We got to move guys that the fan base has gotten used to. That's just a part of organizations and what they need to do when that window is closing. Best believe San Fran will be doing the same thing in a little bit. More guys start to go down with their team.
I'll give you another one that goes a little further back. The Floyd Reese, architect of the 99 to 2003 Titans. 5 years of a window that had a lot of success.
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl, 1 yard short, AFC Championship game, in contention for 5 years, with the exception of 1 year where injuries just short-circuited the 1 year. And then the window closed. But they tried to keep it open.
Mm-hmm.
They tried, and I think this is the comparison to Joseph's question. They tried to keep it open in 2004. You remember it.
Yeah.
Tried to pry it open. Steve McNair was banged up. Kevin Carter got banged up. There was injuries, and it just collapsed, right? And then the window was closed. They had to come to grips with it. They had the infamous day where they had to cut D. Mace. Eventually, they moved on for Steve McNair, and they had to start over. So comparing the 2004 Titans to the 2005 or 2006 Titans is not really a fair comparison because they had to rebuild. Windows closed. The Seahawks, they just made the deal with the Seahawks. The Legion of Boom, the great years with Russell Wilson as a young quarterback, the dominating defense. Eventually, that window closed. What did the Seahawks do? They got a pretty decent return for unloading Russell Wilson's contract to the Broncos, and they've retooled their team, and they've done a pretty good job with Geno Smith being a competitive team.
615-737-1025. To recap, the Titans have traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 5th rounder, that can become a fourth rounder. The conditions on that are still unknown. That is according to Ian Rappaport. From Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, the Seahawks are sending linebacker Jerome Baker and a fourth round pick to the Titans for linebacker Ernest Jones. We'll continue to take your thoughts all show long. 615-737-1025. Brian Callahan will address reporters shortly. We will bring you his comments live. Jonathan Hutton will also join us coming up to break down all of the goings on with the Tennessee Titans. And I just want to let all the builders, remodelers, and homeowners out there know that Pella Windows and Doors invites you to their showroom grand opening tomorrow from 3 to 7 p.m. at 256 East Main Street in Hendersonville. Discover premium windows and doors, enjoy food and drinks, and see how Pella can transform your home. Chase McCabe and Willie Donick will be broadcasting live on location, and there will also be some raffle prizes given away, including Preds tickets, RTIC coolers, and more.
Okay, let's talk Loan Pronto. A lot of Americans out there, a lot of Tennesseans, a lot of people in our listening area, you may have some credit card debt, and you might be paying really high interest rates on that debt. Same thing if you bought a car, you might look at the interest rate and say, whoa, that's a little bit high. You don't even feel it right away, but month in and month out, even though you're making those monthly payments, they're high and you're paying a lot of interest there. That's costing you money. Personal loans, same way. So let Loan Pronto consolidate that debt at a significantly lower rate using the equity in your home. Loan Pronto's Express Equity line of credit can get you up to $500,000. Wow, you may not need that much, but you see what I'm saying. Use that equity in your home, and you're going to pay a lower rate on that. Their average client saves over $1,000 every month. So call Loan Pronto right now and find out more and ask about the Express Equity line of credit. Get your financial house in order for the new year. Call Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, subject to lender approval, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingen here with you, reacting to the multiple trades that the Tennessee Titans have made today. DeAndre Hopkins off to Kansas City, Ernest Jones off to Seattle. From Paul Kaharski, this is the Titans 2025 draft as of right now. They have a first-round pick, a second-round pick. They traded their third-round pick to the Chiefs for L'Jarius Sneed. They have 2 fourth-round picks, their own and from Seattle for Ernest Jones. They have a fifth-round pick and Kansas City's fifth-round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, which can become a fourth, depending on conditions we still don't know. They have a sixth-round pick and a seventh-round pick from Green Bay for Malik Willis. So accumulating draft picks, which makes sense for a 1-5 team that looks to be 1-6 on Sunday against the Lions. And
Anything can happen.
anything can happen.
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible, but I'm going to put the possibility of the Titans beating the
Not
Lions
slim.
somewhere between slim and none. So
You're
what-
saying there's a chance.
there, I suppose I'm saying there is a
never
chance.
know. You never know.
You never know, but I'm pretty confident in saying it's probably not going to happen.
Doesn't look good.
But the Titans are accumulating draft picks. We did get a text earlier. I'm hoping to find it because our text line has been blowing up. But the gist of the text was, how is this going? Oh, here it is. This is from Jeff. Jeff says, money talks to sign players, but most players if not all players, want to compete for a Super Bowl. How does the fiasco of the Titans' never-ending turnover of signing players only for it to not work out and then trading them affect the chances of signing good veteran players in the future when they see the never-ending dysfunction going on in Nashville? Gentlemen, your thoughts?
I think you have the no state income tax working for you.
Mhm.
I do think money talks, and but I do think you have to establish an environment
Mhm.
that brings hope. I think if you go year to year, let's take the Predators. I think there was a time Tennessee is not at a state income tax the entire time the Predators have been an organization, but they had a stigma for a while in the previous ownership that they weren't going to spend to the cap. And hey, can you really win in Nashville? I think there were times where it was not nearly as an attractive place as it is today, where yes, they're going to spend to the cap. Yes, they are committed to do everything they can to win. And yes, they have an ace recruiter now in Barry Trotz. So I think you can go up and down in that. And right now, I think the Titans have to reestablish that foundation.
Yeah, I mean, you go in with the assumption when you sign these guys that, okay, it's going to work out. No GM ever goes into a off season and sign a guy and say, well, this one's not going to work. I know that on the front end. No, they don't do that. They expected or have the assumption that, okay, based upon this guy's history, he's a free agent now, or he's been cut because of salary cap reasons, he should be a good fit for our team. And then you get him here, and maybe the team isn't doing well, and it's only a 1-year deal. So what do? You parlay that to possibly a 5th round pick or a 4th round pick, because now you not only because you're doing twofold here. Not only are you accumulating picks in this upcoming draft or any draft, but you would be doing, in this situation, the player a favor by moving him on to a team that has the potential of winning with a surrounding cast or depth on their team that is conducive to winning. So you send Byard off to Philadelphia. I'm sure Byard didn't complain about that. You send D-Hop off to Kansas City. I'm sure D-Hop isn't complaining about that. But all while you're doing that, you're accumulating these draft picks that you hope, just like every other GM out there, hope that the guy that you're picking can be the guy that helps change your franchise.
So Teron Davenport has some more information about Jerome Baker. Willie gave us a crash course in Jerome Baker. This is what Teron Davenport has to say on Twitter. Quote, Jerome Baker signed a 3-year, $39 million deal with Miami in 2021 and landed on IR in 2023. Miami released him in March 2024. The Seahawks signed Baker to a one-year deal worth up to $7 million. He was on the PUP list in July, then activated 5 days later. Baker has 37 tackles and a sack in 5 games. He has 23 and a half sacks and 5 interceptions over his career.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So at one time, he was a pretty sought-after, highly paid guy, and is trying to, at 28, and this is the crossroads for a lot of players. We mentioned Quandre Diggs, all of these guys. When you get 28, it becomes a little bit more of a year-to-year proposition. But I would view Baker as a placeholder right now, where Denard Wilson isn't sitting there going, oh, man, you just screwed my defense. Thanks a lot. Now who do I play? Right? He gets a serviceable pro to play for the rest of the year that seems to understand the type of system that they're running and can be plugged in there. And then you go from there. If he does great, you can try to re-up him. If not, you just let him go and you go on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the point is of all of this is to try to build up your team. That's basically what it is. You know that at the rate you're going, with the lack of draft picks, it's going to be hard to build your team up the right way. Now, you can try to build your team up to try to do it through free agency, but we know that the more free agents you bring in, if you're banking on them to change the fortunes of your team, then it's going to be a slow death for you because, one free agent may hit and maybe even 2. But if you're banking on, we're going to go each and every year and get these free agents, it's not going to work. Not until you start to build the foundation of your team. And the foundation of your team, as any GM out there knows, is the draft. And if you can get those young players to play well while they're not making the big contracts, that's what leads you into having repeated success and also having a quarterback. But all of that allows you to have repeated success.
615-737-1025. Brian Callahan is expected to address reporters shortly. We will bring you his comments live coming up next. I also want to tell all of our listeners to tune into 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU football. The Blue Raiders will take on Jacksonville State on the road. Also, I want to give a congratulations to Big Joe Dubin. I hear he's about to become a grandfather for the first time.
Congrats, Big Joe.
Big Joe will be a part of that call. The Blue Raiders will take on Jacksonville State on the road. Pregame starts at 5 and kickoff is at 6:30. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV.
Mark your calendars, November 9th. Get your tickets for the Iron Goddess all-female show. It's coming to Nashville and it's sponsored by our friends over at Law Tigers. November 9th, come out at the fairground as female riders from all over the world will be here in attendance. Come out and see some of these beautiful bikes, from choppers to mini bikes, from cruisers to sports bikes. All makes and models are encouraged to come. Get your tickets now at IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com. That's IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com, which is sponsored by Law Tigers. Enjoy a day of live music, vendor village, tasty foods, and so much more. Show off your bike in one of their many competitions and win cash prizes. All spectators are welcome. Kids, it don't matter, but kids under 16, you are free with a paid ticket. So get your tickets now. IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com. That's where you get your tickets. I can't wait to see you there November 9th.
D. Mays, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Brian Callahan is addressing reporters now. We'll take you there live.
That was, that wasn't what happened during the game. And I did not sit him. I was surprised he wasn't in there at first, and they told me he was getting worked on. So that's sort of where that landed. There's no regret over that or how it was informed, but that's how it happened. And then this, all the stuff that comes out there, that was not on the table at the time.
This expected movement that you mentioned, how do you present it to guys like Quandre Diggs or Tyler Boyd on one-year deals, who are playing for another contract?
There's two things that always happen in the NFL. I've always believed, and you're always building, you're always trying to win the day and win right now. And there's always a portion of your football operation that looks towards what's next and what's to come. And you try to balance those things as best you can. At the end of the day, coaches coach, players play, and that's our job. My job is to coach a football team and get ready to play the Detroit Lions. The players' job is to do everything they can to get ready to go play that game and try to go win it. And that's where our focus is. That's where it always is. And then there's always these moments where you get an interjection of something that is with an eye towards what's next. And that sometimes can be hard to deal with. There's a human element in all of this that goes to the players in the current locker room, that goes to the players that are involved in the transactions. There's a human element to it that can be challenging and can be difficult for those involved. And I don't dismiss that. That's a real thing. And but our job is ultimately, we all sign contracts to play football and coach football, and that's what we're going to do.
Expected moves. Just what do you consider the outlook to be for these next 11 weeks, just for the rest of the season?
Oh, I mean, my outlook is to go try to win as many games as possible. Again, that's my job. That's the team's job, and we're going to do that. And we're going to do everything we can to coach, put the team in position, put players in position, and try to go win football games. We may have different players playing, but that's just what it is. And those guys have now opportunities to play, and they're going to have chances to step up and make a name for themselves as well. So, look, there's a lot of guys still here that still have a lot of pride in playing football, and these are challenging things that when they happen, they're challenging. But I have faith in the guys in the locker room and the players that are here. But our job is ultimately to coach as hard as we can, put everything we got in every week, and go out there on Sunday and try to win a football game.
Contradict that idea of always putting winning first, or trying to win over everything?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's two factions that work at the same time. The faction of the business side and trying to make sure your team is set up for the future, and then there's the day-to-day, and we're all in the day-to-day right now. Coaches and players are in the day-to-day. I'm thinking about nothing but trying to get ready for a really good football team on Sunday, and that's just the way it is. That's life in the NFL. That's the business of the NFL, and we've hit a little bit of what the business of the NFL looks like. And my goal and my job is to get ready to go play Sunday and try to win. And our job is always going to be to win now. That's what it is. And anything else after that is out of my control at the end of the day.
As far as the receiver position goes specifically, what's your expectation for the guys that are currently on the 53s? Could some guys on the practice squad kind of work their way up?
Yeah, there'll be opportunity. I think there'll be some opportunities for guys to get off the practice squad potentially. We'll work through those as it comes up, but definitely got guys that have played a lot for us now that we got to get going and play better on offense with. And so there'll be opportunities for sure. And what that looks like, I'm not quite concrete on yet.
In terms of, Will, he had a good rapport with Hopkins. That was one of his favorite targets last year and somewhat this year. How does that affect him going forward as you try to continue your development, as you put it Monday?
Yeah, I think that's part of playing quarterback in the NFL. Your faces change sometimes. You don't always have guys contracts are up, guys contracts are extended, you sign new players. And so there's every year is part of that process. And you have to find ways to get comfortable with whoever you're throwing to. That's part of the job. And I know that him and Will and Hop have been a good connection together for the early part of Will's career, and aided in his development for sure. But that's part of playing the position that, these things change and you have to be able to adapt.
Offensive leaders at this point.
Tony Pollard certainly jumps off the page. Lloyd Cushenberry's been fantastic with that offensive line room. I think we got with JC, as he's learning and playing better and better, his leadership is growing. Tyler Boyd certainly is one of those guys that people lean on. He's got good leadership skills and ability. He's been a captain. He was a captain on our Super Bowl team. So I know what he's all about, and he's done a good job of that. And then there's, I think Tajay's grown as a leader. I think he's done a nice job. So we got guys that know how to lead, and we got some young players that are learning to find their voices too. And I think that's a positive thing. So I feel good about the leadership, and I'm certainly welcome to more of it.
How important is it to you that the guys who you look to lead produce? Is production a necessary element of leadership?
I think the reality of professional sports is that production matters. It's a part of the equation. I don't think you have to necessarily be an all-pro player to be a good leader. And we rely on a lot of guys to lead in that way. But yeah, the production sometimes cements your ability to command because of what you've done on the field. But there's different types of leadership, certainly. And we have guys that can produce. Like I think Tony Pollard produces and leads. I think Tyler Boyd has produced and led. And then there's guys that are learning to find leadership roles and maybe don't produce in the way that the numbers and statistics bear out. The guys like Lloyd and JC and Pete to some degree, those guys are learning how to lead from a spot where production isn't necessarily measurable. So yeah, I think that it goes hand in hand. I mean, generally speaking, your best leaders are often your best players. If it's in a perfect world, that's what you hope for. But there's certainly avenues to lead where production doesn't necessarily be the main focal point.
Obviously, the guys that are rumored to be on their way out, you didn't expect that to happen. How much did this 1-5 record that you guys have now, how much did that impact the change of direction that you guys are going?
No, it's the reality of the NFL. It's the reality of the NFL business. And when you're in a spot that we're in, one that we didn't want to be in, didn't expect to be in necessarily, but when you're in those spots, these are the things that come with it. That's part of our life in the league. And when you get to these juncture points in the season and things like this happen, I mean, it's usually because you're in the spot we're in. The teams that are opposite of our record are the ones trying to acquire players, and so that's just the cycle, and that's how it works. And we're in a spot right now that I'm trying to find a way to dig out of, but that's the reality of business in the NFL.
You went through some tough times early on in Cincinnati, kind of a similar spot here where you have some young talent and now they have the opportunity to play. How do you keep their head on straight and kind of build a new foundation, it sounds like, as you guys are selling?
I wouldn't say it's building a new foundation. I mean, we're trying to build a foundation, period. But the way that you sell it is there's opportunities. I mean, these guys are going to get chances to play. And the hope and the expectation is that they step up and take advantage of it. They seize the opportunity. And again, they're still, we got a team full of guys that are still here that are going to play good football. And that's the other part of it is it gets magnified, but there's still a whole locker room of guys down here that are playing hard and playing for each other. And that's what we're looking for. So again, opportunities will arise and guys got to take advantage of them.
Early in the week, but you anticipate we'll be able to do some things today? And what's the outlook a couple of days after we talk to you?
Yeah, the outlook is we'll probably give Will one more week. We'll see how the week goes. He's still in that week-to-week mode, and I'm not necessarily ruling him out. But I do think that we're going to take a look and let Mason take more reps this week to get ready to play and see how Will comes through the week. But I think he's getting better every day, and he'll be out there doing a little bit of work as well, just working back. So that's kind of where it stands, and there's nothing official on that at this point, but probably leaning towards Mason one more week and let Will have one more week of rest.
Plan to give him as much on Thursday as he did last week, or to peel that back?
For Will?
For Will, yeah.
The plan on last Thursday was to find out for sure if he could play.
This Thursday, are you going to do that again, or is it going to be peeled back?
Oh, it'll be peeled back. Yeah.
And Mason, what would you like to see him do better? What can you do better around him?
Yeah, I think we can protect him better. That there's part of that. I think that we gave up too many hits at the end of the day in that game. Try to give him a cleaner pocket, things that we can do to help there. I do think that he found completions when he had to, and I think we can keep working on that. We can keep finding the completions. He could hit a couple of the plays that we missed. We got to connect on a couple of those plays that were available. But look, this is a really, really good football team. We're getting ready to go play. We got a huge challenge on our hands. They are everything that you want to be in a football team. And when you look at the way they've built their team, it's really impressive on what they've done. They're sort of the model right now on how to build a team and make them a contender. And it's fun to see what they've done and the journey they've been on. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Dan Campbell and his coaching staff. But we got a big challenge, and Mason's got a challenge ahead of him too if he's the one playing. That these guys are a very, very, very good defense.
Ray coming along in his return to.
It's coming along well, and we'll see where. Again, obviously, his window. This is the last week of his window. We'll have to make that decision here. I think Monday is the decision day. So, yeah, we'll make that decision when it comes. But he's done a good job.
Does Isaiah Prince have a chance to be plug and play as early as this week?
Plug and play early as this week? No, probably not. That's that's probably aggressive. But we'll see what we have. Obviously, I've had some familiarity with Isaiah. I've been with him before. He's played a lot of football for us in Cincinnati over a couple of years he was there. And so just a chance to add another player that can come compete on the roster at the position. And so we'll see how he comes along. But I think this week would be a tough ask.
Now that you're a little bit shorthanded numbers wise at receiver, where does Colton Dowell stand in his recovery process?
He's still in the recovery process. He's getting closer. He's in the building every day. He's in meetings. I see him all the time. He's doing well. I don't know that he necessarily is ready now to get going, but that's another one of the things that we'll look at as these weeks go by and when he might have a chance to start his return to play window.
What do you like about the way Nick Westbrook-Akine has approached his opportunities so far?
It's been great. Everything about Nick is what he's been here for his time, and he's knows what to do. He knows how to do it. He plays hard. He's an unselfish player. He's just everything that you want for a receiver in that role, where you're sort of asked to do a bunch of different things. He plays all the positions. He does some dirty work. He goes and blocks, and he's got consecutive touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. Nick just finds a way to produce, and that's one of the things that you love about him. And everything, I love the person on top of it, but he's an undrafted free agent that had to earn his way, and that's what you see in his style of play. And so everything about his help for our offense has been major. It's been a major help for him coming along and finding a role for us. And his role will likely increase.
Talks about Detroit's offense and the creativity. Ben Johnson was another name being thrown around all offseason as a head coaching candidate. What do you see out of his play design, play calling, whatever it may be, that you say, hey, this is why Detroit has found so much success?
Yeah, Ben I've known Ben for a long time, and he is a fantastic football coach. Great feel for scheme and putting players in position. They've collected quite a group of players on top of it. They've really done a nice job. He puts Jared Goff in great position. Jared's probably the most efficient passer right now in football. And then they got a good offensive line that they've built over time there. That's really, really physically impressive. So all the things that Ben does, he puts guys in position. They have all these really good players that he gets to go move around and have a bunch of fun with them. And they're all playing at a high level. And I think what you see from them offensively is a ton of confidence and a ton of belief in what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it took time to get there for them. And they've done a really nice job of adding and building. And then when it's been time to go play and execute, they're the ones making plays at the end of games to win like they did last week.
The team yet today with this flurry of moves?
No, I have not. There was not anything to address this morning yet. So that'll come at some point. But no, I have not officially addressed the team on this stuff until it's all done.
That was Tennessee Titans head coach Brian Callahan, and the beginning of his news conference, which we missed. He said he was aware of all of the reports, but because nothing has been officially announced by the Titans, he was unable to comment on the specific trades that have been widely reported for DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones. And then, frankly, it's not really up to the head coach to comment on these things. We hope to hear from Ran Carthon. Fingers crossed.
But I'm sure he'll address the
Are we
media.
sure he will?
Yes.
If I recall
I'd be
correctly,
willing
he
to-
did not address the Kevin Byard trade after it happened.
Well, because who was running the team at that time?
Mike Vrabel.
And Ryan Carthon absolutely should have addressed the team at that point. I would be willing to bet Ryan Carthon will do a press conference when these deals are finalized. I don't know if it'll be today, but it should be in the next 24 hours. But that's a tough position for a rookie coach to go in. Everybody knows these deals are happening. I thought that was interesting. He has not addressed the team yet because the moves aren't official. I would imagine that's going to happen very soon. But it almost seemed to me like Brian Callahan was a little more relaxed because now the expectations have dropped some. I almost think he sounded a little more, okay, it's time to move forward here. and start to build this foundation, which probably should have been a little bit more of the formula before now. But now I think there's no secret about what they're trying to accomplish moving forward from this point. But it always seems like they get themselves into this point. Remember, Rand Carthon had to tap dance around the.
Yes.
Were you involved in the Mike Vrabel? Was it your Mike Vrabel's? Remember that whole press conference after Vrabel was let go? He was in a terrible position.
Yes.
This isn't quite as bad, but it's the cart before the horse. This is the regularly scheduled Wednesday press conference, and they didn't want to reschedule it. So Callahan has to go on there and talk about the elephant in the room without talking about the elephant in the room. That's tough
because
for a rookie, young head coach.
Because and he handled it really well. I thought he his answers were, at least they were sufficient for me. I don't know, if it was sufficient for anybody else, but what I heard is what I needed to hear. This team is still going to continue to try to go out there and win as many games as they can. He didn't necessarily say it was a rebuild, but by the way he answered it, he understands that this team needs to take a step or two back before they can take 3 or 4 steps forward. And right now, they're in that position. And as a head coach, he just has to be where his feet is right now. And that's to get his team ready and prepare for the Detroit Lions. It's weird how, and listen, I'm gonna let Jared or someone else, try to convince y'all that, this organization is inept and all that other stuff. Again, I don't know. I've never been in those seats. And I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier. There's only one guy that has ever been in those seats, and he's no longer with us. But I would have trusted, 100% his opinion based upon what's going on if he was here to give us his opinion. If he was with us to give us that opinion. But it's kind of, I don't know if it's true to form with the organization, or I don't know how other organizations sort of react in situations like this, but when the head coach when the GM was fired, you had the head coach speaking on that, which was odd. Like, you fired him, shouldn't you be talking? But you had the head coach sort of deal with that.
Right.
And then when you fired the head coach, you had the new GM that had to come out here and talk about this, and it was your guy.
Had to
and
try to get the story straight.
And
right.
then it made him look bad, and
Right.
everybody dumped on him.
He didn't want to trample on Vrabel.
Exactly, absolutely.
And he didn't want to undercut Amy Adams, his boss. That was an impossible situation. that
Exactly.
he was put in.
So it's like, and then everybody gets on Rand
right,
because it's, he didn't do it. It was like, well, he was put in a bad position to have to answer. And then now you have this whole trade thing, and the GM is not out here talking. Will he talk eventually? Hope so. But it just seems like it's just weird how this hierarchy thing, when people get fired, how certain people don't talk, but then other people do.
We have some news on the conditions, everybody. We now know the conditions on the DeAndre Hopkins trade from Ian Rappaport. The Titans get a 5th-round pick that elevates to a 4th-rounder if Kansas City makes the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps.
Well, that won't happen.
60% seems high.
Well, I'm not talking about them making a Super Bowl, but just think about this. I want
60% of the snaps in the Super Bowl.
Also, Tennessee eats $2.5 million in salary. So to recap, before Derek gets to his point, and actually, you know what? I'm going to recap this, and then we're going to hold that point to the next segment. So Ian Rappaport, the Titans get a 5th-round pick that elevates to a 4th-rounder if Kansas City makes the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. I'm assuming that means 60% of the available snaps from here on out.
Does this Sunday count? Their next game?
I would assume, if he's dressed.
Well, that's that. I mean, what are the chances he goes right in there and plays 60% of the snaps this Sunday? I'd want to be talking about details about this, because that affects that percentage. That seems a little bit, I don't want to say unlikely, but that was my first thought, I think, with you too, D Mace. Are you thinking the same thing? 60% seems a little bit high.
And we'll hold, and also Tennessee.
If he misses a game entirely, and that's just a game not played, is it 60% of the games he plays?
All it says
These
is
are details.
Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps, which
I have questions.
Which I
Yes.
assume, this is again assumption. You know what they say about assuming. My assumption is that he plays 60% of the snaps cumulatively of the games he participates
Right.
in.
But the way it's worded, you could also say if they make the Super
Yeah,
Bowl
he plays
and
60%.
Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps in the Super Bowl.
Yes. And the Titans.
So he can play 0 snaps, but if they make the Super Bowl and he plays 60%, if because a 4th rounder.
And the
There you go.
Titans
See,
will eat.
we need a lawyer up here.
The Titans will eat $2.5 million in salary.
We
615.
need Jackie Childs. We need
Yes.
Jackie Childs. We're going to get that 4th round pick. Remember Seinfeld? We're going to get that 4th round pick.
615.
You put the bomb on it? You put the bomb on it?
615-737-1025. We will get Derek's reaction to those conditions coming up next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. I don't think Hutton's going to join us because he has a conflict. Okay. Here comes. Hi, Colin. Hi, Nashville.
We are coming up to another week of the NFL season where you got the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams that will play this upcoming Thursday. And there might be some new faces on the Rams. You just never know, okay? But I know you're going to be betting. Who will not be betting, okay? So if you're going to do it, which I know this is what you're going to do, then you need to do it with our partners, Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee that is bringing sports betting to a whole new level. And I mean that literally. When you sign up for Zen Sports, you'll automatically earn up to $100. No danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you'll be reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. Now that football season has started and we got another week that's about to kick up on Thursday, Zen Sports has launched their revamped betting platform for both college football and the NFL. And what's better, with their new look, Zen Sports will be offering daily promotions, including odd boosts, same game parlays, no danger wagers, and much more. Also, Zen Sports offers a one-of-a-kind VIP reward program. If you qualify, you earn monthly. Remember this: gambling problems will 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply, and you must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
D-Mace, Vingen, and Donick, 1025, 1063, The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen, and we're talking conditions. Love talking conditions.
Not the weather conditions either. Outside.
It's beautiful outside right
It
now.
is. I know.
We do know that.
Yes.
We love talking
Nice.
conditions. We have the full details on the DeAndre Hopkins trade, courtesy of Ian Rappaport. Of course, the Chiefs get DeAndre Hopkins. The Titans get a 5th-round pick that, according to Rappaport, elevates to a 4th-rounder if Kansas City makes the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of the snaps. There's a bit of what's the
Super Bowl?
There's a lack of clarity.
Right.
in
And
it.
it's a tweet, so they can't get all that in there. I would hope that there's a story coming where you define 60%, because I would think you're asking a lot of questions about that.
Oh, of
I would
course.
presume that it means that Hopkins plays 60% of the available snaps when he is active for a game. That is what I would assume.
Right. So that's a fair question, is if he's hurt, because DeAndre Hopkins has had some injuries. He's 32. If he misses 3 games, is that 0-0-0? Because that virtually seals him not playing 60% of the snap.
Well, to me, it's, you know, and this is what I sort of was alluding to, and you said it, Willie. They would, if he plays 60%, however you want to slice and dice this, whether it's 60% of the Super Bowl, if they make it, and he plays 60% of the Super Bowl game, or is it 60% of the remaining games? You figure he gets there today, which is Wednesday. He's not going to play this upcoming week. They'll probably try to give him another week, possibly, to get truly acclimated, because I don't know how much, carryover is from this to what Andy's running. I don't know how much carryover there is. I can speak from experience. When I went from, the Jets to Houston, there wasn't much carryover, but I knew the Houston system from playing under Mike Heimerdinger. So it was an easier transition. Terminologies, it was worded a little bit different, but the concept was all the same. So just believe they're looking at it from this standpoint. No, we really don't want to give Tennessee a 4th-round pick for this one. We feel D-Hop is a guy that they're on their team. He's a break just in case. Not that he's not going to play, but he's there as our other guys start to get healthy. Another reason they went and got him because Juju Smith-Schuster was dealing with some injuries. I don't even think he played this past game, or he left the game early, and then these red flags really started to go up, like Kansas City needs receivers. So they will judge it based upon how much Juju can play, if he can play at all. I'm not sure if D-Hop will play this game. If he does, it's going to be maybe 10 plays of that. But make no mistake, if they're still winning, there's no way they're going to let D-Hop get to that 60%. There's no way. The smart money,
58%.
yeah, smart money would say,
but not 60%.
We got Mahomes, we got Travis Kelce, we got the young kid out of
Xavier
Texas.
Worthy.
Yeah, Xavier Worthy. The running back is back, and he's running
Pacheco.
No, not Pacheco, but who did they bring in? The old Kansas City Chief. Now he's back. I forget the name. His name is slipping me.
Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt. Yeah.
Kareem Hunt's running well. Now the defense is top notch. So we don't need to necessarily rush him into things. We can kind of slow play this because we got the ultimate elixir in the quarterback.
See, that's
so
why I was asking about the first week, because
we're
he's just getting there on Wednesday. He's not, even if he's activated for the game, he's only going to play.
Do you imagine the front office of the Kansas City Chiefs at one point in the season is going to say, looks like DeAndre Hopkins has played 59.8% of the snaps. Hey, Andy Reid, let's just not give DeAndre Hopkins a couple of snaps here. Let's leave it at 59.8%.
No, Andy knows.
Yeah.
Andy knows. He understands. They're playing chess. They're not playing checkers. Everybody's looking at it from a checker standpoint. Kansas City is playing chess. They got them another chess piece that they don't necessarily like. It's not a dire need, but it helps them. Okay, so we don't have to rush him into things. Why? Because we got the ultimate king in that It's Mahomes, not Derek, but Mahomes. He's the ultimate elixir. He makes everything perfect, so we don't have to rush D-Hop in there. And if he's getting close to that 61%, do you think that I, as a GM, want to give up a 4th-round pick? Hell no.
Also, by the way, they do have to make it to the Super Bowl, which I know the Chiefs often do, but it's still not a given. Like, that's not easy to do.
One texter
Ravens,
on our text line does say
Bengals,
Derrick Henry will be the sole cause for the Titans only getting a 5th-round pick from the Chiefs. It would be the most Titans thing possible for the Ravens to beat the Chiefs on the way to the Super Bowl with Derrick Henry running wild on the Chiefs.
Funny. That's funny.
It's going to be a nasty night on Twitter.
But listen, I'm going to tell you this. Regardless if D-Hop plays 31% of the snaps, 71% of the snaps, or right at the 61, that man is so damn happy right now because he's on a team that more than likely will be in the Super Bowl representing the AFC. He's just sitting back like, man, wow, God is good. That's what he's probably saying.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Has DeAndre Hopkins ever even been to the AFC Championship game?
I think the year that they blew that lead,
that was the divisional.
Or was that the divisional?
I think.
So he's never,
because
the
Titans would have played. The Titans played the winner of that game.
Yeah,
that
they would have played Houston had they won.
Right.
Houston
they won
was
in
up
Baltimore,
28-0 or something.
Yeah,
like
it was
that.
like 24-0 or something like that.
And ended up blowing the game.
I've never seen a lead evaporate that quick.
Yes,
but it did.
Yeah, so he's never played in an AFC Championship
No,
game.
he has
well,
not.
he may get an opportunity to play
In fact,
one.
I don't think Houston has ever made the AFC Championship.
No, they haven't.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals certainly weren't
the Cardinals,
doing anything when he was there. Our friend Adam in Portland, who thought I was mad at him because I left him on hold yesterday, is on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, go ahead, my friend.
Well, I started the Titanic and I got to the painting scene and I just gave up, man. I was like, he ain't gonna do it. All right, so here's the thing, man. Just imagine that you are Brian Callahan today. Like, I feel bad for the guy. Like, people could bag on him all they want. Analytics are showing that he's getting people open, right? So, or that the plays are supposed to work. But he has to come in and pretend that he likes Levis, because you can't say my quarterback sucks. That's not something people say. And you can't say I'm totally cool with trading DeAndre Hopkins. Like, you can't say I hate that. Like, he's a Hall of Fame player. Why would I want to get rid of him? You got to pretend that all this is good. His players suck. Our players suck. Like, they're bad, dude. Like, clear across the board. T-Mace was hitting on it so hard yesterday, depth. And, like, it's coming, dude. Like, you got to get bad to get good. It happens. Like, we were good for a minute. But I feel for Callahan because he's taking all these punches. Jared's over here, like, bagging on him every single freaking day over and over to the point where it's super annoying for fans to listen to. But, like, I feel for the guy because it's not his fault. He's doing what he's supposed to do as a head coach.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. Listen, he came into a situation where he assessed it and maybe he had all the information, maybe he didn't. I don't know. But just like any other coach out there, their egos are bigger than the room. I don't know how all these coaches fit in one room anyway, because their egos are large. And the players' egos are large too. So it's not just a coaching thing. But he came in here and he said, you showed me some film on this guy. I saw him up. No, they didn't see him up close because Cincinnati didn't play him. But he thought, okay, I can do this. He has some tools. I can make this work. All right, Amy said, make it work because I like him. He's that strong arm guy, sort of in the line of a Joe Flacco, Josh Allen, guys with big arms that can throw it through a hurricane. He's that guy. Well, it's not working out. Okay, so now he has to pivot, and that's with the roster in general. He understands this, and this is what I have been trying to tell people, and they kept saying, oh, you just hating on him or hating on him. I wasn't. I am just, whether it would have been me. If it was me, I would have came to the same conclusion. This offense was slow. The passing game was slow. D-Hop's a damn good player. He will go into the Hall of Fame, but he didn't make their offense fast. He made their offense slow, okay? And listen, D-Hop had never been one with speed, okay? So I'm not telling people something that they don't already know. But as a head coach, a young head coach that had just came from a system where I see T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Boyd, who you got now. But that offense was fast. It moved fast. The reads were fast. I remember when Vrabel said this, and I thought about it, and I told people then. He's talking about the receivers. He ain't just talking about the coach. The quarterback. He said we need to be faster. Wide receivers need to get into their routes faster. He knew they couldn't because they didn't have the speed to get into their routes faster. But that's the only way this thing works. You got to get into your routes. If this is a rhythm passing offense, everybody has to be on the same page. This thing needs to be going. It needs to be going fast. And the Titans offense wasn't going fast. They need to get faster at that position. Put that young guy Jackson in. Your offense automatically gets quicker. I'm going to say this. Use that kid. Find out for the remainder of the season what you got. 9-10 games left. Find out what that kid Jackson can do. Because he just might be that diamond in the rough that you have been looking for. He has everything that you need to succeed in today's football. He's fast, he's quick, he knows how to catch the ball. He's a punt returner, kickoff returner, so he knows how to run in tight spaces. Put him on the field, see what he can do. Because outside of that, Calvin Ridley up until this point has dropped too many footballs. I'm not saying you can't count on him, but man, oh man, he has to start changing his fortune. Tyler Boyd is who he is. He's a clutch, a guy that you can rely to catch the ball. So has Nick Westbrook-Ikine. But no one has that quick, twitch, fast sort of type of play. There's one guy that has it. That's the young kids that's sitting on the bench. They put him in a game this past weekend. They put him in. I saw him in there for a couple of plays. They need to start playing him more. As I said last week, this is an opportunity now that you have to evaluate everybody. Throw them young kids in there. See what they can do.
615-737-1025. It has come to my attention that Paul Kaharski has updated some of these conditions. The Chiefs make the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of their snaps for the remainder of the season. So according to Paul Kaharski, so we're probably looking at a 5th round pick for DeAndre
I think
Hopkins.
It'd be interesting to set the probability because we have no idea, and they can control, as you've said, they can control whether it's 55%. They can keep track of it. Now they do want to win, right? But they are 6-0 right now. It's not like they have to win every game just to get to the playoffs.
But they feel they can win because they got the quarterback, no matter what.
But they can use him. They can use him as they see fit, which makes it unlikely. I think 6% seems high to me.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by Mitch Light of The Athletic for our weekly discussion about college football. Preds fans, don't miss this Wednesday night's Smashville live show at Brewhouse 100 tonight in Bellevue at 6 p.m. Player guests this week will be Mark Del Gaizo and Zachary LaRue, fresh off his NHL debut last night. That's tonight at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue and on your home for the Nashville Predators 102.5 The Game. D. Mays, Vingen and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen here with you, joining us on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Our friend Mitch Light from The Athletic to discuss college football. Mitch, a big game this past weekend between Tennessee and Alabama. Tennessee gets the win. I want to discuss the fallout for both of those teams coming off of that game. Alabama, a 2-loss team before November for the first time since 2007, which was Nick Saban's first year at the university. Has Alabama played itself out of the college football playoff because of the loss to Tennessee?
No, obviously did not help. Couple things Alabama has going for it. Obviously, it would behoove Alabama if Tennessee keeps playing well, and that's not a bad loss. But that win over Georgia, I think what Georgia did at Texas was the best thing for Alabama. We don't really know how to talk about the college football bubble like we do college basketball, because we've been following the college basketball bubble for, ever since they went to 64 teams. But I always say, if you're on the bubble, what have you done that differentiates yourself if you're a college basketball team? Same thing here. If Alabama's comparing itself to other bubble teams, no other team will have a win as good as over Georgia, in theory. Now, caveats left and right. If there are 3 losses, does that trump a 1-loss Big 12 team that has nothing close to as many good wins as Alabama does, but only has 1 loss? So the answer is no, it doesn't, but it obviously puts them in a really tough situation. And for Tennessee, it's obviously a huge boost. Losing that would have been really tough. And the bigger thing for Tennessee is, if you were assessing their playoff hopes at halftime, you're like, playoffs, they need to start playing good football after, 3 straight first half of not scoring. Well, they flipped that script in the second half, and now they can rightfully talk about playoff because they have that good win, and they clearly played much better in the second half.
Vanderbilt hosts Texas on Saturday. I was hopeful that Texas would beat Georgia just so that we would have the opportunity to watch Vanderbilt host another number 1 team because of what we saw a few weeks ago with Vanderbilt taking down Alabama. I haven't seen the line on this game.
18.5.
Okay, 18.5, which is smaller than the line was for the Alabama game, which I believe was 21 or 22.5. But based on what we saw from Texas last week, a rough game for them. You hope, they're hoping for a bounce back performance. What are you expecting this weekend on West End when Texas visits Vanderbilt?
Yeah, the best team that Vanderbilt has played this year. They're better than Alabama. I don't know if they're more talented. They're very, very, both teams are really talented. I would say Texas is probably more talented, and they're clearly playing better. They are good across the board. They've had a lot of injuries at running back. They're not necessarily explosive there, but they've got big-time wide receivers. I know the offensive line had trouble with Georgia, but there's very few teams that can present those types of problems with the edge rushers that Georgia does. But from a recruiting standpoint, their offense and defensive lines are just absolutely stacked. So this is a really, really good team that's coming off a bad showing. Obviously Quinn Ewers has looked, as that game at Michigan was as good as a quarterback has played this year against a quality defense. But I don't know if he wasn't healthy or whatever. He just started seeing ghosts. He clearly was not very good for the first half against Georgia. So it's going to be a very, very tall order for Vanderbilt again, which has already won 3 games this year as a double-digit underdog. So that should not faze them. But they're going to have to keep doing the things that they've done this year, is not turn the ball over, win the field position battle, possess the ball, control the clock like they have. They know the formula, but can they follow it and execute it again? That's going to be the biggest challenge.
We'll talk with Mitch Light of The Athletic discussing college football. Now, Mitch, this thing plays out for Vanderbilt and Clark Lee, and say, they get into a bowl game, win 6, possibly even 7. I believe they can. They still have a chance to win 7 games. Should he be mentioned in serious consideration for Coach of the Year in the SEC because of where this team was expected to be, and then they go out and they beat a ranked Virginia Tech team, they go out and they take Missouri to the brink of, an overtime, and they should have won that game, double overtime, I believe. And then they come back and they beat an Alabama team. Depending on how they look against Texas, I think they got a shot at beating Texas. No one thought they had a shot at beating Alabama. So I'm going to say they got a shot at beating Texas as well. If indeed they can pull out, let's just say 7 wins, should he be in true serious contention for Coach of the Year?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I thought you were going to ask National Coach of the Year, which he would be too. Right now, Frank Cignetti, with what they're doing in Indiana, has to be in that mix. I'll say, is the thing about that, the thinking through the teams, if Texas A&M happens to win the league or finishes second and gets the conference championship game, there'd be a lot of thoughts from Mike Elko for Coach of the Year. But clearly, a lot of it is always with Coach of the Year defying or beating the odds, doing better than people think. And the fact that they've already won 3 games as a double-digit underdog tells you he's already done that. So still a lot to be played, but clearly he would be in the mix.
Okay, now as far as Alabama, I look at them not so much because the board, I know he's feeling it down in Alabama right now. But if you look at it, if I'm an Alabama fan, I would be more disappointed in how their defense has played. They've given up 40 points, 25 points, 24 points, and we're talking about within the last 3 weeks. We're not even talking about the Georgia game where Georgia came back and they scored 34 points and almost won that game. So just looking at it from that standpoint, listen, he only has 2 losses. He's still in contention for the playoffs. But I'm just looking at their defense. Like, Bama fans, they just have to be pulling their hair out. Not necessarily because, they have 2 losses, but the way their defense has been playing.
Yeah, in conference play, so they played 4 games. They are averaging they're allowing 5.9 yards per play, which ranks 12th. I guarantee you that is the worst in conference play at Alabama since before Nick Saban got there. I could pull it up. I don't have it, but their third down defense has been bad. I mean, that was the problem in the Vanderbilt game and the South Carolina game. I thought they were fortunate to have, in the first half against Tennessee. Tennessee just missed some throws. Nico missed some throws, some guys who were wide open there. So, I think they took a step forward probably in the Tennessee game, like big picture. But you're totally right. I thought Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator they hired, who's the head coach at South Alabama, was a good hire. I mean, he'd done well as a head coach, really good reputation. I'm not going to sit here and say I've watched all the film and can tell you why they're struggling, but the results are the results, and they have not been good enough for Alabama for the personnel they have.
Talking to Mitch Light from The Athletic, talking college football. Mitch, does how Alabama, like if you're Tennessee, it seems like you want Alabama to play great from here on out, because I'm looking at their schedule and I'm thinking if they were to lose one more, if they were to lose a competitive game at Georgia and that's it, they'll be one of these bubble teams. You use this, and I was thinking about this when you came on. I feel like there's going to be a lot of 2-loss teams that are going to throw their hat in the ring and say we should be an at-large, and it's going to be really tough to differentiate those teams.
Yeah, and I did not come up with this phrase, and I'm not trying to be, a smart, but like the thing about a 12-team playoff, there's 12 teams. We get it here at The Athletic when Stu Mandel posts his updated bracket every Sunday, and, God forbid, listen, Notre Dame, like as the 12th seeder on the bubble, people are like, they lost to Northern Illinois. How could they be there? How could this team be there? They're terrible. Well, you need 12 teams, and then the teams that are on the bubble are going to be 13, 14, 15, 16. So, and
you're saying there will be very little difference between team 12 and team 17, 18, probably.
Yeah, exactly. There might be a little difference between team 7 and team 14. It's just we don't know how this committee is going to react. We all have our opinion of a 10-2 Kansas or 11-2 Kansas State Big 12 champion team that has maybe 5 solid top 30-ish wins or top 40-ish wins versus a 3 or 4 loss SEC team that might have 1 bad loss but has some really better wins. How is the committee going to treat that? Are they going to be spooked by a 3rd loss or a 4th loss, even by a team, like I said before the season, with Georgia's schedule? Now, Ole Miss hasn't turned out as good as we thought, but with Georgia's road schedule, in addition to playing Tennessee at home, you know, if they lost 3 games, they would probably still be a college football playoff team. So that's what's going to be fun, is obviously the debate, but just how the committee will treat all these teams and these different resumes. And there's going to be a lot of pushback from the non-SEC Big Ten leagues and schools, because, you know, like I said, the top teams in the Big 12 appear to be separating themselves, where I thought it was going to be just a big group of 8-4-ish teams. Well, it looks like Kansas State and BYU are kind of separating themselves there, or in Iowa State, excuse me. So yeah, to your point, it's going to be a mess, and it's going to be hard to differentiate the two teams, because like college basketball, there's 38 games or whatever in your regular season. You got 12 games. There's just really not as many data points.
That's going to be very interesting. LSU at Texas A&M, massive game in the SEC, because the winner, this is the way around having to throw yourself at the mercy of the committee, is to get to the SEC championship game and win it. And you get a bye if you win that game. So the winner of this game would be at least having an inside track for the moment.
Yeah, I'm going to counter that by saying that I've heard a lot of debate lately now. What if you are in the SEC championship game or the Big Ten championship game and you lose that game? Do you get penalized for making the conference championship game?
That is a great question, and not everybody will agree on the answer to that question.
And it's not what they want. I mean, there's no way that's a good thing in a sport which
it'll be great for the winner, but the loser is the one that could
right.
be in jeopardy of falling back, is what you're saying.
There's no scenario in sports where you should want to finish third in a conference standings as opposed to second, that it's better for you. It's just not like, then why? I know they hold the conference championship games for money, but like, what's the point of a conference championship game if you'd rather finish third than second? So, but to your point, yeah, I mean, these are two teams that we kind of had in that second tier heading into the season. They just keep winning games. LSU's kind of figuring it out. They're getting better on defense. Texas A&M has been very impressive. They survived the quarterback injury to Wegman. He's playing really well coming back. We knew they were really good on the defensive front. So it's going to be a really fun game where, you know, it's always a good rivalry game. They've played for years, but I don't think any of us had the LSU A&M game circled as, you know, potentially settling maybe one of the teams for the conference championship game.
It's a big one. It's so much fun that Army and Navy are both undefeated. Now Navy gets a shot to host Notre Dame. What do you think their chances are?
What I always worry about whenever Army and Navy, when they're good and they play a team with the type of talent, is just getting overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage. We know how the option's difficult to defend. We know all that stuff. But just sometimes they show up, we think it's going to be a game, and then if it's whether it's Notre Dame or anybody, if they play discipline, if they play like they're supposed to play, this stuff just doesn't work. And that's my fear for Army. So, I mean, they have not – Navy's played a more difficult schedule to date. Army, really credit them for beating the you-know-what out of everyone, but they really have not been tested yet. So I'm worried for Army that they're just going to get overwhelmed by the talent on the line of scrimmage. Notre Dame's very good defensively.
All right, I asked this in the big picture, and this is not the Clark. I would never ask Clark Lee this question, Mitch.
Okay.
I'm curious. Okay, Vanderbilt, a good win at Kentucky on the heels of the win against Alabama. I think everybody for Vanderbilt would be looking at this game this weekend and say, okay, if they pull another incredible upset, that would be awesome. If they don't beat Texas, right, they have to find another win on a very difficult schedule. They have a tough schedule. Auburn is a 2.5-point dog at Kentucky this weekend. Vanderbilt goes to Auburn. What do you think right now the line would be on that game?
Before seeing, obviously, what happens in these two games this weekend, I would say Auburn by 3.5.
So I just don't want the Vanderbilt fans to be shocked if they are an underdog at Auburn, because Auburn's 2-5 and 0-4 in the league, but Auburn is bringing some stuff to the table. See what I'm saying? Don't you think that will look like an odd line if that's the case?
Well, Vanderbilt probably won't be ranked if they lose this game, even if they play well. It's just the way the rankings work. So you'd have a team that was just ranked this week playing a team that could be 0-5 in the league, or 1-4, whatever they're 0-4 now. Auburn's a player like a lot of teams. They're a player or two away from being 2-2 in the league, and it's just betting lines are set based on public perception as much as actual what's expected to happen because they're trying to get 50% of the money on each side there. So that's a very good question. I could be way off, but that's kind of my initial thought.
I'm saying it's no gimme, right? They'll just go down and beat Auburn. Like, I think Vanderbilt fans know better, but I think the casual fans who are watching,
they better know better.
Well,
I think,
but
Willie's
they
trying
need
to
to
say that
find
Vanderbilt-
another. They need to play well every week and give themselves. They've got to win another game or two to really cap off what is already a memorable season and a huge momentum boost for Clark Lee in the program.
Guys, what I'm hearing is Willie suggesting Vanderbilt should rest Diego Pavia for the Auburn
Basically,
game.
yeah. Let's rest him. Let's sit him out for the Texas game and get him ready for the Auburn game.
And by the way, Vanderbilt, according to
saying
ESPN, has the 8th hardest remaining strength of schedule in the country. Yes, 8th.
Right, and they've already played some tough games too. So, it was. I remember real quick, guys. I know I had a friend in from out of town who hadn't been to Nashville basically since my wedding, and I was just walking around Vanderbilt's athletics facilities this summer because I remember it was like 100 degrees, and we walked by, Willie, like right in Magoogan, wherever they have the schedules, the football schedules, like just in huge board or whatever. He looked at this and he just shook his head. He's like, "Oh my, good luck with that, buddy." I just remember him saying like that.
Mitch Light of The Athletic joining us as he does every Wednesday to talk college football. Mitch, thank you for joining us. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good, guys. Take care.
Mitch Light joining us, by the way, in terms of 1 through 8, hardest remaining strength of schedule in the country, according to ESPN. Florida, 1, Kentucky, 2, Oklahoma, 3, Washington, 4, Nebraska, 5, Purdue, 6, Michigan, 7, Vanderbilt, 8. So Vanderbilt has the 8th remaining strength of schedule, hardest strength.
Damn, you should have beat Georgia State.
Well,
that
that's what you
game
hope
will
isn't
loom.
the
That
thing
game
that
will
bites
loom
you.
large.
Yeah.
We shall see. 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Titans. We've seen DeAndre Hopkins out the door. We've seen Ernest Jones out the door. So the natural question is, who's next? We'll discuss that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk Lee Company. Service in our area since 1944. That is really, really interesting. That is 80 years, 8 decades of service when it comes to your home, and it's important to you. You have to run it efficiently. Your heating, your cooling, your air conditioning, your electrical systems, Lee Company can do that for you. They are reliable. We've used them for years and years now in our house that was built in 1913. So stuff breaks down at times after it ages for a while. We just got a new heating and cooling system from Lee Company. We work with them over the summer. So they're a big sponsor of the Nashville Predators. Give them a call, 615-567-1000, or go to leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. Have you had your heating unit checked? Do you need some maintenance done on your home? Are you thinking about a home improvement project? All of these things, Lee Company can help you with. It's Lee Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
Tune into 102.5, 106.3 The Game this Saturday at 11 a.m. for our college football game of the week, Oklahoma versus Ole Miss, presented by Twin Peaks Restaurants. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you, continuing to react to the Titans trades today. DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs, Ernest Jones to the Seattle Seahawks. The question, of course, now is who's next? Who could be joining Hopkins and Jones out the door in Tennessee? Could we see Quandre Diggs traded? I believe he's on a one-year deal. What about Tyler Boyd? I believe he's also on a one-year deal. Nick Suss of the Tennessean points out Harold Landry is under contract through 2026. But there's an out in his contract this offseason that can make him a more attractive piece for a team that doesn't want to invest in 3 years of his service. The same is true for fellow outside linebacker Arden Key, who is under contract for 2 more years, but has a possible out in his contract after this one. So if we're thinking of who could be next for the Titans to be traded, as this team looks to be, the Titans have become the big box store for Super Bowl contenders. Hey, do you need a potential future Hall of Fame wide receiver, but you don't want to break the bank? Come on down to Titans Co. and you can have one for only a 5th round pick. It just feels like, because we saw it with Kevin Byard going to Philadelphia. We saw it with AJ Brown, although that was a 1st round pick, going to Philadelphia as well. It seems like the Titans are where it's at for contenders looking for discounted veterans could help you push your team over the top. But who could be next?
Let's assess the market for all those guys you mentioned.
Sure.
None of them move the needle.
No.
Except for one, and that's Landry. The other guys, if you could get an extra 6th or 7, I don't see anything higher than a 6th. Maybe a 7th for any of those guys. Let me start it with this, D-Mace, wide receiver. You've got the Bengals, who are sitting there at 3-4, trying to dig out of a hole. They were 0-3. They were 1-4. They've beaten 2 bad teams to get to 3-4. But hey, they got to make it happen. They got T. Higgins until the end of the season. They got to pay Jamar Chase. Like, this is a window. You got Joe Burrow. Their schedule does look like it's a little more doable. Would you throw him a 7th for Tyler Boyd?
I don't think I want to do that.
I'm just asking if the Bengals would take him. Would they take him back for a 7th just for the rest of the year? 1-year deal?
Possibly. There's a possibility they could. Man, that
but
was tough.
Then you flip it and say, does Rand Carthon take that?
Exactly. The way I look at it is this. When you talk about Diggs, I don't think Diggs is going anywhere. I think they would rather re-sign Diggs because he's young enough. He has that attitude that you want. I listened to that press conference that he did by his locker. That told me a lot about him. It really did. And those are the type of players they need to keep in their locker room, guys that think like him. So I don't think necessarily they would be looking to move off from Diggs. So Diggs has played well. He got injured the one game. I don't know if he came back or not. But
he's been in there. He was in there last week.
So. He's a good player. He's a solid player, a guy that you can continue to build your secondary around. So I can't see them, wanting to part ways with Diggs right now. Honestly, I think they would want to possibly re-sign him to maybe a 2-year extension. And once the season's done, is he under a 1 year? He may be under a 1-year deal. So maybe they want to extend or re-sign him to a much friendlier contract. Give him, 2
What do you want
years.
to resign though? Because Jamal Adams was the reason why he.
I think
over.
he's going to want to resign. Now listen,
but he's in that year-to-year phase of his career.
Now if he continues to play well, stays healthy, then I think his market and his price continues to go up. But if I'm the Titans, I would be looking at a guy like that to help sort of stabilize the back end. So we sign him to a 2-3 year extension, pay him a little money. You ain't got to break the bank to pay him. So that's a guy that I can see them looking to the future and say, okay, he's a guy that can help us moving forward. Harold Landry is another guy that I think, because again, if you get rid of Harold Landry, you get maybe a third conditional second or a second. I can't see it being a conditional first, but let's just say between a second and a third. But then you got to replace that productivity that he's given you through the draft or through free agency, going to get somebody else. So I'm not sure they're going to be, ready to move off from Harold Landry because he's playing well. He's one of the bright spots on your defense.
The
so
thing
why
that
get
gets
rid
me
of
about it, I think it's a really good debate. We've already had it once, you and I, because my thought is, you got to tell me what you're offered, right? If it's a second rounder, because I don't think it'll be a first rounder. Adam, what got this going? Joe proposed a crazy deal with the Detroit in which they were going to get a first rounder.
After Aiden Hutchinson suffered his injury for the Lions, Rex Rode proposed a trade on the morning show where the Titans trade Landry to the Lions to replace Hutchinson. There was also an element where they swapped backup quarterbacks because Hendon Hooker had to be involved for some reason. But the crux of it was
GP Joe.
Landry for a first-round pick to the Lions.
I just don't see a world where Harold Landry, as solid as he is worth a first-round pick, especially with the price tag. Now, Nick Suss, you just said, and I was looking at the Spot Rack website, I see you would pay something like $12 million of dead money to get out of his contract, but he is a very expensive player.
How much will he be making? How much will he count against the cap?
His cap hit is over $20 million. I think it's something like
But
22,
this year or
23. Next year, in the remaining years of his contract, which is why at the end of this year is a crossroads.
Maybe they rework the deal.
I think they would have that opportunity to do that. But that's why I'm leaning towards, okay, if I could get something, a valuable draft pick, top 3 rounds, that's when I really have to look at it, because I just say to myself, look, as good as Landry is, the next couple Titans teams, I just don't see them winning. I don't see them winning the next year or two. So those extra picks, I got to look at.
The question I have as it
and you're clearing cap space
as it relates to the DeAndre Hopkins trade is the Titans are going to pay, according to various reports, $2.5 million of DeAndre Hopkins's remaining salary. And Willie, we see this all the time in the NHL, that if you are willing to retain salary in a trade, you get a better asset out of it. Maybe that second round pick becomes a first round pick, or maybe the value, the quality of the prospect that gets thrown in goes from a C-level prospect to a B-level prospect. So the Titans are reportedly retaining or eating $2.5 million in salary. I wonder how much that played into what the ultimate compensation was. If the Titans weren't willing to do that, would it have just been a 5th round pick with no conditions? Does taking on some of the salary add the condition? I'm curious how much that played into the ultimate value for DeAndre Hopkins.
Only Rand Carthon knows, and I would ask that question in a press conference, and I am really hoping, because I would assume that Rand Carthon, once these deals are finalized, will hold a media availability.
We
He
hope.
absolutely should. And then I've had you guys look at me going, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Well, that's what a GM does."
Yeah.
He didn't last year because I think
The situation was
the
different.
situation was
Yeah.
different with Vrabel. This is one he needs to be out front of to talk about where they go from here. It's a really interesting question. Was it a 6th? And then they said, well, we'll pay half the salary. Okay, now we'll give you a 5th. I don't know. The Chiefs, I think, needed to make some money work because of their salary cap situation. Year to year, they're constantly trying to squeeze in to keep the window open. And they've had to make some tough choices, like the one that had them trading L'Jarius Sneed to the Titans.
Well, if they wanted D-Hop, they could have signed him at the beginning of last year, but they didn't have the money. They were trying to get him for a certain price. He wanted more money, and he got his money. So, listen, he had an opportunity to not be in this position that he's in now, D-Hop. He had every opportunity because he could have just went to the Chiefs for less money. I understand why he came here. They paid him the money. I probably would have done it too. It was double what probably Kansas City was going to pay him. But ultimately, Kansas City The good organizations ultimately they get what they want. They may have to wait a little while, but they get what they want. They got D Hop. Here's why I think it's easier to trade a D Hop as opposed to a Harold Landry. How much was that money, that buyout? Sort of, how much money do they have to pay Hop? $2 million, right? They got to
The
eat $2
Titans,
million. Yeah,
according to reports, are paying $2.5 million of the remaining salary.
absolutely. And how much would they have to eat in order to make a trade work with Harold Landry? Probably triple or quadruple that.
So that's
to eat the money. And the Titans are not going to do that.
That's a good question because there's so much left, so much
Exactly.
term left on that. But we know in the salary cap of the NFL, there is wiggle room. There's fluctuation. There's ways you can get out of
I
contracts.
can see them doing it next year if the season still is kind of iffy. I can see them possibly doing it next year as opposed to this year because I can rework the contract in the offseason, lower the cap hit, and then if things are not working well, then I give myself more room to, or I give myself more suitors to have if indeed I do want to go trade Harold Landry. Because right now, yeah, you could trade him, but you're gonna have to eat a lot of that money. Well, why don't we just play the season out? Harold's a bright spot for us. Rework the contract because no, we don't want to have, even if we keep him, we don't want the price hit to be 22, 23 million. Let's rework the contract. And then if things are not going well, we trade him and then eat less of the money than we were going to eat this year.
The important thing about these trades is that the Titans take those draft picks, and I've heard Jared refer to draft picks as lottery tickets, and I think that's an accurate way to describe it because you don't know how those players are going to turn out, but the more opportunities you have to take players, the better chances you have of finding someone that sticks. Now, the 2 picks that the Titans got in the Kevin Byard deal last year turned into Jarvis Brownlee and Jaquan Jackson, who the Titans hope turn into productive players. I think Brownlee has been impressive considering where they got him in the draft, and we'll see on Jaquan Jackson. Had a great training camp, and as Derek says, may now have more of an opportunity to play regular snaps with DeAndre Hopkins out the door than we saw. Conversely, we saw A.J. Brown traded for a first-round pick that turned into Treylon Burks. So it's important that with all of these picks that the Titans are grabbing in these deals, that they find at least a couple of players that they can build around in the future.
I'm curious about Arden Key as well. Is he a guy that could get you a 6th or a 7th? I just haven't been impressed.
6 or a 7.
Haven't been impressed with him since he's been here, really. But does somebody in their scheme say, we need an extra guy? We're trying to win. We need an extra edge rusher. You never have enough of them. I'll throw you that's one where, if you end up with 3 7th rounders,
maybe Harold, maybe
I mean, who knows? Maybe you hit one. Maybe you hit one, but that's you almost have nothing to lose, right? What are you going to do with Arden Key between now and the end of the season?
Maybe Arden Key is just a situational player. And they have to start him, and he's shown enough for him to be a starter, to earn that right to be a starter. But maybe, yes, he's earned that right to be a starter, but maybe he's just a situational player. Maybe you can get the best out of him is if he's just a guy you bring in on 2nd and long or 3rd and long, and he can just tee off. Because I think that's what he kind of was like with the Jaguars. They were bringing him in and out of the lineup, and he did well. He did well in San Francisco. So maybe if you put him back in that role, I'm not saying that Arden Key is a bad player because I think he's a good player. He's a solid player. But if you put him in a role that's more beneficial to him, maybe you can get more out of him. Or maybe it's just too late. And if you're trying to trade him, you're at a point now that even if you make him situational, he's still nothing more than at best a 6th-round swap in a sense.
We'll see if the Titans make any more moves. The trade deadline is still a couple of weeks away, but got a head start on making moves today, trading DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs, trading Ernest Jones to the Seahawks. 615-737-1025. We want to hear from you on where the Titans go from here. 615-737-1025. Call us or text us. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Derek Mason here, and I want to tell you, listen, mark your calendars for November 9th. Get your tickets, and I'm gonna tell you where you can get your tickets. But it's the Iron Goddess Motorcycle Tour, which is sponsored by Law Tigers. They're headed to Music City, Nashville, Tennessee. Don't miss this event. Again, November 9th at the fairgrounds in Nashville. It's time for an amazing motorcycle show centered around and brought to you by the female riding community. Remember, it doesn't matter what you ride. If you ride, you're an Iron Goddess. So get your tickets. The info is at IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com. That's IronGoddessMotorcycleShow.com, which is sponsored by Law Tigers. Can't wait to see you there.
D-Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stoneman and Company coming up next. Derek, at one point earlier, you said Rand and Company. And I thought to myself, Rand and Company? Is that the new show at 2 o'clock on 102.5, 106.3 The Game?
Oh,
No.
man.
Jared will be up next, breaking down, continuing our discussion throughout the station on the Titans' moves with DeAndre Hopkins and Ernest Jones, with more to come, I would imagine. Now, Willie, we brought out the scrolls during the break because one of the questions you asked during training camp was the combined yardage of DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, and you said it at 1,200, correct?
I said it at 2,200.
Oh, I'm sorry, 2,200. Well, they're certainly not doing that.
It's not close. Well, it was them combined. Right?
Yes,
D-Hop and
combined.
Ridley with 17 games. The idea they would both be a little over 1,000, and it looks like neither will approach 1,000 at this point. We know DeAndre Hopkins, unless we count his yards for the Chiefs, which is
Yeah, that's
D-Mace's
right.
question.
I want to count the yardage with the Chiefs.
I say there are no conditions. There are no conditions on this. That does not happen.
I honestly set the bar too high. I should have set it at 2,000 tops, but Adam and I did go under. D-Mace went over, so that's why he was asking. Do the Chiefs yards count?
Exactly. The
But
Chiefs
even
yards
if they
count.
do, you can see the questions are designed so that if they go a certain way, that would almost tell you what the record is going to be for the Titans. It's going to be much better than people expected. But let's not forget, this is again in the context of they were, whether they told you or not, in a rebuilding year all summer long. Every power ranking, every prediction, and I have it right in front of me. We found 3 people that picked the Titans to make the playoffs before the season. 3. Jamie Erdahl, NFL Network, somebody named Dakota Zientek from ProFootballNetwork.com.
Sounds like an AI
don't know who that
generated
is.
writer to me personally.
Could be. And then I guess Jeremy Fowler, we found him. But by and large, every power ranking had the Titans between 25 and 32 in the power rankings. So to overachieve to me would have meant around 500, maybe a little over 500, 9 and 8 kind of stuff. But these questions are all going, and we'll revisit them after the 8th week. But D-Hop and Ridley, they needed them to mesh well and be productive. Neither has been productive.
And by the way, DeAndre Hopkins finishes his Titans career 23 games, 19 starts, 90 receptions, 1,230 yards, and 8 touchdowns, 7 of which came last season. Just 1 touchdown this season.
Last year was a solid year.
Yeah, it was. But that was because, as I told everyone, when you are the only guy, and they were looking at him because he was the only guy that seemed to catch the football.
Right, and they had a running back that was crowding the box.
Exactly.
Right,
So he was a volume guy, so they threw it to him in volumes because that was the only guy they truly can rely on in the passing game. And if that's the case, then you're going to throw it to him. But when situations became ideal, like straight across the board, we have more pass catchers now, then his targets was going to dwindle because they were going to be looking to the younger established receiver in Calvin Ridley. Now, listen, it hadn't worked with any of them, whether it be Ridley, Hop, Boyd, Burks. It's worked with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine because he's throwing
got 2
the ball
touchdowns.
4 times, and he got 2 touchdowns with 3 catches, I think, somewhere around there. But
I like those percentages.
yeah,
by the
I
way.
do too, which means they need to throw him the ball a little bit more. But with a guy like Hop, and again, the only reason I say this because I went through the same thing. When you have a guy, but I went through it I was 35. When you have a guy that is getting up there in age and his skills have diminished some, you have to have an offset for him. You have to have somebody to be able to, that's that home run hitter, somebody that the defense is going to sort of gear toward, because if you don't, it's going to make your job even harder as an aging veteran. His job became even harder because what was supposed to happen was Ridley come in, Ridley take up all the defense, and Hop is there as the sure-handed second choice. Well, Ridley wasn't doing his job, or they didn't find a connection which means Hop couldn't benefit, which made it even worse. Now you have a guy that you brought in ain't producing, the quarterback ain't hitting him, and then you expect a guy that is aging to uplift everybody, and it just didn't happen. Now he goes somewhere where now he has a fast guy on the side of him that can stretch the field, and as Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster has done, they did all the mucky, dirty work in the middle. That's what Hop's going to be able to do, and red zone. That's how he helps the Kansas City Chiefs. He don't help the Kansas City Chiefs by adding more speed. He helps them with another sure-handed guy. More importantly, a guy in the red zone that we can throw the ball to that can go up and get it.
We have a grade on the Titans trade with the Seahawks, according to ESPN, a B- for the Seahawks, an A for the Titans.
I mean, I can't see. And I think they would get an A for the Ernest Jones trade to begin with. So I think it's back-to-back A's in terms of just maneuvering of assets. What did they really lose? They got Ernest Jones for a song, and they turned him into Baker plus a fourth, right?
Well, what cannot happen though in this? Because right now we're just starting the school year, and yeah, you got a good grade on this test. Yeah, you got a good grade on the test, but the ultimate test is the final test, and the final test for the Titans is taking all of those grades that you have, parlaying that into something that is going to work. So you got an A for this, you got a B for this. If you don't take those picks at the, as the season gets ready to start next year, you don't take those picks
Very fair.
and hit on them, then I don't care what you got at the beginning of the year, you failed the final. And that's what they cannot do, fail the final. And the final is the draft.
Seth Walder of ESPN writes, in a vacuum, I like Seattle moving from Baker to Jones, but I'm surprised it took this much draft capital to get the deal done. Baker and Jones will cost their new teams about the same amount of money, considering Jones is a rental, and it feels a bit pricey for a Seahawks team that has a 29% chance to reach the playoffs per ESPN's Football Power Index. That being said, Jones is a good player, and I could imagine Seattle seeing him as a long-term solution and wanting to trade for him now in hopes of securing him with a new deal before free agency. He continues, for the Titans, this is an easy win. At 1-5, they are rationally moving expiring contracts and veteran players for draft capital that can help them in the future when they might be a contender again. Tennessee acquired Jones in a 5th, 6th round pick swap with the Rams in August, got 6 games from him, and then flipped him for a profit. That's good business.
That's good business.
ESPN.
And I think that the Hopkins is pretty decent working of the assets. They signed him. They got a good year out of him. And as he's aging and his contract expiring, you get an asset back. I think that's good business. Now, like you said, you've got to cash that in to these throws at the draft board. They have to hit on a certain amount of. You don't have to hit on these exact picks, but the more picks you have, you got to come up with good players somewhere in there.
Teams were able to build their. You just look at the teams that have been successful over the last 10 years or whatnot, and I look at the team like Detroit Lions. I look at in the San Francisco 49ers, because Detroit traded away their quarterback. I know they got a quarterback in return, but they also got a few draft picks in return. You see what San Francisco was able to do, how they built their team through the draft, because I'm sure they made some trades here and there to accumulate a bunch of draft picks. You just got to look at those teams and what are those teams able to do now? They were able to flip those trades into really good draft picks, and they were able, in the process, build their roster and build their team for long-term success. Free agency is short-term success. Drafting is long-term success. Right now, the Titans are trying to build that long-term success. And they started down a good road this year by trading off assets to try to recoup some of those picks that they gave away in order to get players to come here. So regardless of what you think of Ran Carthon, whether you think he should be the one that's sort of making a call during draft, you gotta sort of, acknowledge that he's trying to do this the right way. And what I mean is he's trying to accumulate draft picks to build this roster up.
We shall see if Rand Carthon has any more moves up his sleeve today. So long, DeAndre Hopkins. So long, Ernest Jones. We hardly knew ye, particularly Ernest Jones. He was only here for about 3 months, not even 2
Titan
months.
great.
2
Ernest
months.
Jones.
If you got your Ernest Jones jersey, I'm hoping that the pro shop will allow you to
change the nameplate.
exchange it.
Hopefully, we'll see. You know.
What number is he? 51?
53.
53?
Yeah.
Ernest Jones?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to think of, you could put Bullock on the back.
Yeah, just do what
Yeah.
you need to do. Yeah.
Do what you got to do. That's what the Titans are doing now that they're 1-5. Stillman and Company coming up next, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be loved, love on your people. Have a wonderful and blessed Wednesday. Peace.